Hi beautiful people, Alice here. Welcome to this live Q&A, my very first one on this platform. I feel super blessed. Already you guys are joining, beautiful. To be connecting with you guys and to be talking about this incredible life-changing stuff that is Cascade dry fasting and dry fasting in general. So excited about this. Beautiful. Thank you, multidimensional heart. Oh, you guys. So let me know about the sound if you guys can hear me well. And what I'm going to do before I start with the Q&A aspect of this live, I'm going to share a little bit by way of an update about where I'm at with my own Cascade journey. So I'm now on day 11, and if you're not sure what Cascade dry fasting is or how the breakdown works, I'll explain it in a minute. But for now, just I'll share a bit where I'm at. So I'm on now day 11 of 30, and I have done 1 day dry fast, 1 day juice and fruit, 2 days dry fast, 2 days juice and fruit, 3 days dry fast, and I'm now on my second day of 3 of hydrating after the second round of dry fasting. No, third round of dry fasting. So tomorrow will be my last juicy day, and then I'm going to enter another period of dry fasting on Saturday. So Saturday, Sunday, Monday and Tuesday I'll be dry fasting, this time for 4 days, followed by 4 days of juice and fruit. So a little bit more on that in a minute and how the whole process works. But I wanted to update you a little bit by way of how it's been going for me, so you can have an idea of where I'm at and the kind of stuff that comes up as you cascade dry fast. And basically for me, physically the journey so far has been practically symptom free. By that I mean negative symptom free, in that I haven't had any dizziness or tiredness or weakness just yet. My energies have been feeling really, really good. If anything, I've been sleeping even better than usual. I've been feeling a lot more alert. I've had a lot of mental clarity, and I feel very, very aligned energetically to my purpose, to my mission, and my overall happiness and sort of feelings of inner peace have been greatly emphasized by being on this fast. That having been said, there have definitely been a few emotional releases that have taken place. So I'm on day 11 now. I've had 3 days on which stuff came up, and some tears and some processing and some letting go. And if you guys have been keeping an eye on my profile, and you will have noticed that I had a bit of a backwards and forwards going with raw vegan ginger, and that whole process definitely triggered a bunch of stuff in me. And I did a couple of videos on this. If you haven't seen those and you're curious, do check them out. But for me, what it meant was essentially a recalibration of why it is that I do what I do, and a refinement of how I'm gonna direct and channel my energies so that I can be my most effective and my most helpful self, because I really, really want to be of service. I want to share my experiences in a way that inspires and helps other people. And I came to realize that there was a part of me that was being defensive, and there was a part of me that still on some level cares of what other people think about me and about the things that I do, fasting, coaching people. And then I felt that trigger come up, and it was very, very beautiful. And I'm really grateful that I had an opportunity to do some emotional processing and to cry and to feel that kind of existential sadness that can come up sometimes when we let go of old imprints and old ways of seeing reality. And after each energetic release, which was, lots of tears, some journaling, some crying, meditating, contemplation, insights, feeling into what's there for me. And after each one of the 3 releases that I've had so far, I felt so much lighter, so much more connected to myself, to nature around me, and with each one more and more on purpose. And yeah, it's been a ride so far, but I'm going to be honest, I'm still kind of in the reasonably early stages of the Cascade fast. So even though I'm on day 11 of 30, the longest I've done so far is now 3 days of dry fasting. And I actually have a 4-day and a 5-day coming. So there's going to be plenty more coming up. So many questions are popping in the box. I don't even know how I'm going to keep up. Hi, Raw Angie. She asked, how is Sam doing? I saw Sam the day before yesterday, and he was on day 3 of his dry fast and taking part in a singing workshop because he's healing thyroid cancer, and I advised him to focus on chanting and vibration and singing and really helping to activate this energy here and to shift and move old energies. So he was full of energy, came to my house, drove here on a scooter by himself, and he's been taking part in this singing workshop, and he was doing it whilst still dry fasting and still doing his Ashtanga yoga every morning, which some of you may know, it's a real full power practice, and he's been plowing on ahead and feeling good. And I love Sam. He's such an inspiration. You can follow him on Facebook. He's also on Instagram to keep up with his journey. And I'll also be updating you guys, and we'll do some follow-up videos. There's also a video of my interview with Sam and Simon Shine, who's also supporting Sam as he goes through this process. So you guys can check out that content if you're curious to know more. So I'm going to wrap up this initial kind of sharing around my own Cascade journey, just to say how deeply, deeply grateful I am for this amazing process, and for how already I can feel energies shifting. Already I can feel ways in which I was limiting myself, ways in which I was being lazy. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, I still consistently find laziness as a pattern coming up for me, and I have to kind of fight it a little bit. And every time I fast, it kind of takes me out of this laziness, self-sabotage pattern. And I'm feeling so inspired now with different projects and different types of content that I want to create and share with you guys. So for me, it's not so much the physical. Obviously, there are a few little physical things that I'd like to do. I have a few grey hairs that I'd like to reverse permanently. There's a part of me that would obviously love to completely get rid of any last traces of cellulite. It's taking a bit of time. I don't have what I would call my dream body yet, but I've largely given up on that concept, and it is indeed a concept. So for me, largely, it's not so much the physical that I'm fasting because of. It's more for the spiritual purpose, and more for really reconnecting more with myself and continuing to let go of patterns, let go of imprints, and really nothing burns through karma quicker than fasting, especially when you combine it with mindfulness, with meditation, with breath work, with being in nature, with trauma release exercises, so many different ways of supporting this process of releasing sanskaras, releasing these imprints that are energetically keeping us stuck in low vibrational frequencies. And already so far, day 11, and I am feeling so much lighter and really, really stoked and excited for this longer dry fast that I'm going to do. So again, if you guys have been keeping up to date with my content, you'll know that it's to support Sam that I'm doing the Cascade dry fast now. And also kind of a secondary reason is more like for my own personal preparation as I enter a longer dry fast in April. I'll be aiming for longer than 7 days, 8 nights, which is my current kind of maximum dry fast that I've done in one stint, and really inspired by Fasting with Trevor's recent 20-day hard dry fast. And yeah, I'm trying not to put a number on it, but I really want to go for something like 15 days plus. I'm going to be in full surrender to the body, and I'm going to be keeping an eye out on the things that might be indicators that it's time to break the fast, and I will be sort of sharing around that in a minute because it's one of the questions that was asked. So who knows, I might go for longer, I might go for shorter. I'm really not attached to a number per se, but I definitely want to really go for it in terms of letting the body take over, stepping out of the mind and really entering this kind of shamanic portal that fasting is, and specifically dry fasting, because you guys, you go through such a process when you dry fast, and I feel this bubbling up of excitement coming up from within me as I prepare for this longer dry fast. So really, it's kind of early days for me. Much more to come. Yeah, I think that's about it by way of an update from me. So we've got so many questions. I hope to be able to get through all of them. A lot of the questions you guys shared were duplicates, so I'm not going to be repeating myself in that respect, but if I answer a question that's very similar to yours but not yours precisely, it's because somebody had already asked and then I felt that it didn't need repeating. So first of all, what is Cascade dry fasting? So Cascade dry fasting is where you alternate periods of dry fasting with periods of another type of fast. It could be water fasting, it could be juice fasting. I personally like to do it with juice, which is for me fruit juice, and or coconut water, and sometimes I like to eat some whole fruits. So I have not been limiting myself too much in that respect. So on the wet days when I'm not dry, I've not only been consuming astringent fruit juices and coconut water, but also have been eating some fruit. So I ate some mangoes. I even had a little bit of durian yesterday. It was incredible. But largely I'm focusing on the juices, and the way it goes, I'm doing a 30-day Cascade fast, which basically means that it goes up to 5-day increments. So it goes like this: 1 day of dry fasting, 1 day of juice and fruit, 2 days of dry fasting followed by 2 days of fruit and juice, 3 days of dry fasting followed by 3 days of juice and fruit, 4 days dry, 4 days juice and fruit, 5 days dry, 5 days juice and fruit. And this in total is 30 days. And out of those 13 days, 15 are basically dry, and then 15 are spent with hydration, basically. So you're dry and then you're rehydrating the body, and then you're dry and you're rehydrating the body, but each increment gets longer and longer and longer, and therefore you go deeper and deeper as you go into the Cascade fast. So it's a very, very powerful and potent way of basically squeezing all of this toxicity and waste and mucus and acidity from the body, and just getting rid of all of this old muck, which is what the dry fasting phase represents, and then rehydrating the body, just flushing through with lots of hydrating, structured living waters, and remineralizing the body, lots of electrolytes, and obviously lots and lots of hydration on the wet days. And one really, really nice analogy that I've heard in terms of dry fasting, if you can imagine, you've got a very dirty dishcloth, and it's dry, and in order to clean it, obviously we're gonna want to submerge it in some water. So ideally, before any kind of dry fast, you want to spend at least a day on liquids. I'll go into the detail about this a little bit later on, but you're already rehydrating the towel, as it were, before you start the dry fast, because you want to make sure that you're nice and hydrated before you do any dry fasting. So you've got your dirty, filthy towel, and you put it into the water, and in the water, all of these astringents basically that are breaking down the filth and the dirt. And obviously the analogy here is kind of, it works, but it's not full analogy. But anyway, what I'm referring to here is the astringency in the fruits and the juices. So by astringent, I mean citrus, watermelon, pomegranate, dark purple grapes, but basically lemons, limes, all of these are extremely astringent and really, really good at basically pulling out mucus and waste from the body. That's what astringency means. So if you can imagine, you've got your dishcloth, it's very dirty, and you've got your bowl and it's full of water and it's full of all these cleaning agents. So we submerge the dirty dishcloth in water, and then the day one of dry fast basically amounts to one ring. And as we wring out this dirty dishcloth, loads of waste and filth is going to come out. We then, and obviously we're not rinsing out into our clean bowl, we're rinsing out somewhere else. So this is being eliminated from the body. And then we submerge again the dishcloth, but this time for longer than before. So it's got twice as long to really soak up all of those cleaning agents, all of those astringents. And then we wring out the dishcloth again, except this time we wring it out twice as long. Again, it's not being rinsed into the bowl, it's being eliminated, it's being rinsed elsewhere. This time we rehydrate again the body for 3 days. We dive in with the dishcloth and it's getting 3 days worth of hydration. And then again, it's being wrung, except this time for 3 days, for 3 times as long as the first time. And then this process of like dipping it into the waters and then wringing it out and getting rid of all the muck. Can you imagine when you repeat this process again and again, and each time it's longer and longer and longer, just how much waste and toxicity and mucus, heavy metals, etc. are being pulled out from the body. So a really, really profound and powerful process. Another really essential aspect of Cascade dry fasting is that you're not only rehydrating the body and helping to cleanse and eliminate via the liquids that we hydrate with by drinking or enjoying some fruits, but also by doing colon cleansing and doing a lot of enemas, and in the coming days for me also some colonics to really, really help pull out this waste from the body, to really help squeeze this dishcloth of any leftover filth and dirt and parasites. So in short, this is what Cascade dry fasting is. The next question: what preparation does the body need beforehand? How to make it easier for the body? So essentially, the cleaner the body is when you enter a dry fast, then the deeper you're going to go with the dry fast itself and with the Cascade fast. So really, the preparation is just be as clean as possible as you enter, and do some juicing, I'd say, for at least a day or two beforehand to make sure that you're nice and empty, that there is no leftover waste sitting inside the bowels. This is really the most important consideration when it comes to dry fasting, because any uneliminated feces or waste sitting in the colon, the body is going to basically try and suck the water out of that uneliminated feces, because it's dehydrated and it's looking for any source of water. And as you can imagine, the water that the body is going to manage to suck out from that feces is going to be very filthy. So we don't want to hydrate the body with really filthy water. Furthermore, the really dirty water, the feces and the filth that's inside us will have a volume or an amount of toxicity, and then the body will basically interpret that as overall toxicity of the body, which will make the fast itself a lot more challenging and a lot more symptomatic. So in order to go longer and to have an easy and symptom-free journey, you want to make sure that you are clean. So colon cleansing is absolutely essential. I would recommend ideally a colonic before you enter a long dry fast, and at least a couple of enemas whilst you haven't eaten any solid food for a few days. It's really, really important that you focus on colon cleansing not only after a dry fast, but also before a dry fast. There are so many questions shooting through. I'm going to see if I can pick up on a few before I move on to any of the ones that I've got here. Is pineapple working as well for the fueling? Yes, pineapple is one of my favorite fruits, and I love juicing it, and it's very, very high in enzymes. It's very astringent. It's really, really good at pulling acidity from the body, specifically, more so than probably any other fruit. Really good at pulling out sulfur from the body. Sulfur is very acidic, very toxic. And I focus largely on pineapple, watermelon juice, sugarcane juice, and citrus when I'm refueling and rehydrating, whether in between a dry fast or on a dry fasting Cascade or in real life. I absolutely adore citrus and pineapple juice. Thank you for your question. Is one enema a day Is it one enema a day on juice days? Absolutely. I would say at least one enema a day. On some days, you might be eliminating a lot. Maybe your energy is low and you might find that actually you need 2 enemas a day. Really listen to your body. Really, one is kind of like a minimum, I would say. Obviously, I'm not going to say obviously, maybe some of you don't know this, but if you're on a dry day, or as we'd say, in your dry window, you don't want to be doing any enemas or other kind of colon cleansing. Ideally, if you're doing a hard dry fast, you don't even want to be making contact with water because the skin will absorb some of that. So enemas only during wet periods or wet windows only. So on the dry fasting days, there is no colon cleansing, no enemas, but I always ensure that I colon cleanse really, really efficiently. And I'm very disciplined in this respect, because if you don't, you can experience auto-intoxication. And a lot of this elimination that instead of basically coming out of the body ends up sitting in the colon and it's not being eliminated. And unless we help support with colon cleansing, a lot of that will be getting recirculated again into the bloodstream, and we really, really want to avoid that. So yeah, big one about the enemas. Okay. I'm going to try and keep up with your questions, you guys, but there's quite a lot pinging through. So if I miss anything during the live, I'll go through it and I'll see if I can catch up with your comments and respond personally, okay? So the next question in terms of preparation for Cascade dry fasting, what if you don't eat raw vegan, was one of the questions. So I largely eat raw vegan, and by that I mean I largely eat fruits and I do eat some salads, etc. But 95% of my diet, I would say, is fruits. However, that doesn't mean that I am fully raw vegan. I still occasionally eat some cooked foods. I still have some pumpkin. I still eat cooked veggies. I still occasionally have some chickpeas if I fancy it. So many questions. Okay. Do these videos go on YouTube? I can ping this on YouTube if you'd like. This is, I guess, automatically going to go onto Instagram, but I can download it and stick it on YouTube. Sure, no worries. My well water is slightly acidic. Should I raise pH before enema? I would say that you don't really need to do anything before you do an enema. I would say just crack on, and the process of doing enemas regularly will... you mean your well water as in the water, okay, the water you're using. I thought you meant your internal waters. My bad. I wouldn't recommend using well water to do your enemas. If anything, it's a little bit too high in inorganic minerals, and you can absorb these, and I'm personally not a fan. I'm also not a fan of alkalizing water and then putting it inside the body, but I think if you have no other option, then you can definitely raise the pH of well water by squeezing some lemon or some lime into it. But make sure that if you put it through the enema tip, that it's been sieved so that there is no fiber that could block that. So yeah, sorry about the confusion there. But ideally, if you can get filtered water, Pillion air, or ideally distilled or reverse osmosis water, that would be ideal. But absolutely, if well water is what you've got and what you're rolling with, then you can increase the alkalinity by adding some lemon or lime. But I wouldn't recommend drinking alkaline water. This is kind of a topic for a different video, but don't drink Kangen water or any kind of alkaline waters, because these will dilute the hydrochloric stomach acids, and we really want to avoid doing that. The danger obviously isn't so bad when it comes to colon cleansing, but yeah, ideally as clean as possible with the water. In the dry windows, can I wash my teeth? Yes, absolutely. And I highly recommend it actually, because there's a lot of elimination that takes place. So I regularly tongue scrape. I have a tongue scraper and I use it at least 3 times a day probably. And then when I'm dry fasting, it's probably like 4 or 5 times a day. And then when I'm in the latter stages of a dry fast, maybe every couple of hours I'll scrape my tongue, because there's just so much mucus and elimination and kind of muck, and it's really unpleasant. And also you want to get rid of that. It is an organ of elimination at the end of the day, so you want to keep keep getting rid of that mucus. It's also going to make the whole experience a lot more enjoyable for you in terms of having a nice taste in your mouth. And I also find that my teeth can get a bit furry when I'm dry fasting. And again, this is all part of the elimination, and the bacterial builds up. So you want to make sure you clean around there. But obviously, if you can avoid using water, that would be ideal. So what I do, and I do this generally anyway, I use essential oil, peppermint essential oil, and this is what I brush my teeth with. So I literally just get my toothbrush, and on a regular day when I'm not dry fasting, I'll rinse the toothbrush under some water and then add 3 or 4 drops of peppermint essential oil. But when I'm dry fasting, I literally just put the essential oil on the toothbrush and then just begin to brush, and it really works. It's very cleansing, and you're kind of adding no water really. You're kind of using your own saliva to help clean out the mouth. So yeah, absolutely essential that you keep the teeth clean, and that you tongue scrape, really, really big one. Can you talk about your view on salt? I am planning an entire post and potentially even a video on this, because it's an absolutely huge topic. So keep an eye out for that in the future coming days, maybe a couple of weeks max, but it's coming soon. In short, my view is that inorganic salt, of which the vast majority of salt, even things like pink Himalayan salt, sea salt, Celtic salt, etc., they're inorganic. They're not bioavailable nutrition, and there's a big difference between sodium chloride, which is table salt, and which is what sea salt and pink salt and Celtic salt are, unless they haven't been processed, but this is extremely rare. Actually, what you're looking at is something that is extremely toxic for the body. The body only uses sodium, organic sodium. And also the body needs a very, very small trace amount, something like 200 to 300 milligrams a day, whereas the standard American diet contains something like between 4 and 10,000 milligrams of inorganic sodium. Plenty more to talk about. So future video or live, and also a post coming up about salt. Some use coffee for the enema. Is that possible as well? I don't recommend coffee enemas. They're stimulating for the adrenals and they are unnecessary. Basically, caffeine is a neurotoxin. It stimulates the central nervous system. And what you're looking to do here is to support the body, not to add further obstruction and further stimulation into the body. So there are some rare occasions on which a coffee enema would be beneficial, where it's kind of essentially the lesser of two evils, but that is only in very, very rare cases of advanced acidosis, things like terminal cancer cases, etc. Then the healing benefits of the coffee, whereby toxicity is eliminated via the liver, are greater than the negative effects. But otherwise, if you're not in that bracket, then don't recommend it at all. And there is a myth that the coffee or the caffeine is not absorbed because it's not being digested. And in my own experience, and I did experiment with coffee enemas because I love to try these things out for myself. I don't take people's word for it. I try it out for myself and I see the experience on my own body. It's the only way to know for sure. And at the point at which I was experimenting with coffee enemas, I'd already quit coffee. I was never a massive coffee drinker, but I certainly drank it for quite a few years while I was working as a lawyer in the city. It was a very classic thing to do, and I'd have at least 2 or 3 coffees a day. Sometimes if I'd been out partying the night before, I might have like 4. But I wasn't a huge coffee drinker, and it's only something I did for maybe 2 or 3 years. But anyway, I digress. By the time I experimented with coffee enemas, I'd been clean of coffee for quite a while, and I definitely 100% felt the stimulative effects of the coffee enema. So I definitely don't recommend it, and I definitely know for a fact that it does stimulate and that caffeine is absorbed via the colon. Have you heard of reverse osmosis water being called hungry water, in that it has been forced into an unbalanced state and will pull minerals from you in a return to homeostasis? Yes, I have. It's not true. I don't really want to spend too long talking about enemas, waters, because I almost feel this is a subject for a kind of entirely different live, but I will respond to that. Basically what's happening is that when you have clean water, distilled water, and reverse osmosis is almost as clean as distilled water, in that there are very, very, very few trace particles remaining of any inorganic minerals. What happens is that with distilled water, and I'm going to put RO water in the same category, it has a negative ionic charge. What this negative ionic charge does, it basically binds to and attracts positive ionic charged materials within the body, which are basically heavy metals, toxicity, things that need to be pulled out from the body. So much as bentonite clay or activated charcoal do the same thing in that they become binders. Distilled or RO water does the same thing. And when people claim that it leaches minerals from the body, what's actually happening is that these negative ions are sticking to inorganic minerals, which are basically waste. It's calcification within the body, and it's helping to take these and pull them out of the body. So it's not that minerals are being leached from the body, but more that waste and other toxic materials with a positive ionic charge are being attracted by the negatively ionic charged water. If you're concerned about the structure and frequency of distilled or RO water, it's really easy to reactivate this water with crystals. Shungite Elite is the most powerful crystal you could use with water because of its fullerene content. And there are lots and lots of other things you could do, like adding a little bit of lemon or lime to it. And doing this will help basically reactivate the water. But you know that water is receptive, very receptive to frequency. So whilst crystals and lemon, etc. help, even just your intention as you meditate into the water, if you intend for the water, for the water's vibration to become harmonized, you can make that happen with the power of your own will. If you combine modality with crystals, etc., then you can really help activate and charge the water. Sunlight and moonlight are also very potent. So let me see what's happening. I've heard that fasting can be detrimental to your adrenals. What do you feel about this? I have this on my list, so I will be responding to that in a minute. Let me just see if there's anything here. Can children dry fast? Absolutely. Obviously, take it easy, take it gently, don't push anything, but children can absolutely fast, and especially if there is some kind of disease or diagnosis or some kind of physical symptom or mental or emotional symptom, dry fasting can be incredibly beneficial for children, as it is for adults, as it is for animals, as it is for plants. All of nature dry fasts, all of nature benefits, but obviously make sure that it's done in a wise way, in a non-egoic way, in a very gentle and conscious way. Getting so many lovely compliments from you guys saying I'm glowing and I'm looking beautiful. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the support and the encouragement. I just read recently that the studies that have been done, which show benefits of fasting, that in those early trials, women in their fertile years are rarely a part of the studies. And that for women in their fertile years, it has the opposite effects. No, that is simply not my experience. I am a woman in my fertile years, and I can tell you irrefutably from my own direct experience that this is not the case. And basically, nature doesn't work that way. Why would all of nature benefit from dry fasting and fasting in particular, except women in their fertile phase? It makes no sense to me. If what you're referring to is kind of the monthly cycle, then there is some truth to that, in that as we approach our monthly cycle, basically we enter a period when we lose a lot of our chi. So for the male bodies, they lose chi when they ejaculate, which is why in tantric and chi kind of practices, they advise practicing semen retention, and there is definitely a lot of wisdom to that. For women, we can orgasm as much as we want and we don't lose or dissipate any energy. However, it's during our monthly cycle that our energy is at its lowest. And it's during this time that any weaknesses, any sensitivities within the body are going to come up to the surface. And for some, it's more difficult to fast during their moon cycle. And for some, the symptoms are more intense. For some, even if you're not fasting, you'll experience more pain, more emotional disturbances, perhaps skin discomforts, whatever it might be. This is a result of the fact that the system is at its weakest during this phase. However, this is not to say that fasting is not recommended during this time. But perhaps fasting might be a little bit more symptomatic, perhaps a little bit more challenging. And I certainly advise women who are in the early stages of their journey to take it easy during this time and maybe take the foot off the gas, maybe even don't fast at all during the time of your moon cycle and leading up to it if the symptoms are too strong. However, to not fast because of this fearful belief that I can't, it's dangerous, it's not right, they can fast, but I can't. I simply don't adhere to any kind of limitation in that way. And actually, during the last 3-day dry fast that I did, I'm pretty much synced up with the full moon. I got my cycle on the first day of my 3-day dry fast, and for all of the 3 days of the dry fast that I did, I was bleeding and I was absolutely fine. It basically almost made no difference to my fast. And I strongly advise women with very strong symptoms during this time to actually do some fasting, because if you have a heavy bleed, if the emotions are strong, if there's a lot of pain or cramping or other symptoms, then it's a sign that the system is very toxic, because what's happening during the monthly cycle is elimination. So if the body is choosing this time of elimination to really eliminate, that is a sign that there's a lot to be eliminated. And in my own experience, again, this is a subject for a whole entire life. I don't want to spend too long on this, but I used to eat animal products and take lots of party drugs and drink and smoke and eat terribly. And I had 6, sometimes 7 day long cycles. I would bleed a lot. There were blood clots. It was extremely foul smelling. And for the first couple of days of my cycle, I would have to take very strong painkillers because I was in a lot of pain. I also used to experience extreme amounts of PMS. I'm talking crying, tears, drama, arguments with boyfriends. I was really, really wobbly in the lead up to my moon cycle. And it was precisely because I was extremely toxic and the body needed to detox. And as I have fasted, as I have cleansed my body, my periods have become lighter and lighter. In fact, because I was dry fasting this time and the body is in a stage of elimination, a process of elimination, I went deeper than usual. Normally my cycle nowadays is less than 2 days, with really 75-80% of the bleeding taking place on day 1 and only a little bit of light scattered bleeding on day 2. This time I had 3 days of full bleeding, and it was interesting because it was definitely thicker and darker, and I could see that a lot was coming out, but I felt no pain and no discomfort. So I totally do understand where this comes from, this idea that it's not safe for women to fast during the luteal phase and coming up into the moon cycle, basically. But it's a little bit of an extreme approach, and I don't feel it needs to be so black and white. I think it's about taking it on a case-by-case basis, looking at each individual person's symptoms, needs, toxicity levels, emotional state, etc., and basically taking a gentle approach, which at the same time isn't based in fear mentality. Thank you so much for your question. Okay, I'm scrolling through to make sure I'm not missing anything. Do you recommend herbs to help with the cleansing before the fast? What are your thoughts on neem and turmeric? I always recommend herbs. I think herbs are incredible, and I recommend them particularly during fasts because the body is more sensitive to herbs. So my favorite administration method, as it were, is through herbal tinctures. And I sometimes even take a little bit of tinctures during my dry fast, because it actually really helps support the body. The information that is contained in the herbs has a huge impact when the body is extremely sensitive. And really, when you're dry, you're at your most sensitive. When you're eating, the information is somehow lost. It's like the music's so loud that this kind of symphony of herbal support is simply not picked up by the body. Whereas when you're fasting, so juice fasting, fruit fasting, intermittent fasting, but specifically when dry fasting, that is the time to focus on the herbs. So I would say you can absolutely use neem and turmeric. I absolutely love them and have used them a lot in my healing journey. They're very beneficial, and they stem from a lot of past experience, with the yogis and Ayurvedic. These are Ayurvedic medicines, and particularly turmeric, but also neem, really, really potent also for helping decalcify the pineal gland. And this helps us have a much more authentic and real experience of reality, whereby the multidimensional is more and more accessible through this body, via this portal that we have here, through the third eye. And neem and turmeric particularly are also, tamarind is great, and also haritaki, which is found in triphala. It's one of the 3 fruits in triphala. These are all very, very beneficial for supporting the expansion of consciousness and decalcifying the pineal gland. And also they're very anti-inflammatory, which is also a great support for the body. So yes, absolutely. Hi Alice. As someone who is really skinny, I fear to lose too much weight when dry fasting. Have you any advice about that? Absolutely. And I'm actually planning to do a big series or live or something on this, because I feel that there is a lot of resistance to fasting, and specifically to dry fasting, because of this fear of weight loss. And the most important thing really to remember is that the body will always bounce back. This period of fasting is kind of a temporary abstinence. And as we temporarily abstain from food and from liquids, the body goes through a really, really deep purge. And this elimination takes place at the body level, which means that wherever in the body waste is stored, it's going to be eliminated from that place. And fat is where the body stores a lot of its toxicity and heavy metals, etc., etc. So as we lose weight, because we're fasting, all of these fat cells, particularly during dry fasting, where this process of autophagy takes place much, much faster, at least 3 times faster than when water fasting. So all of these fat cells are basically being burst open in order to access the water contained within. And as a result, all of the toxicity and waste is released. So it's kind of inevitable that in order to release waste, you're going to have to break down some fat cells. You also release waste in other ways. So you release it via the sweat, you release it via the breath, you release a lot of waste from the lymphatic system via the urine. And you continue to urinate when you're dry fasting. And then, of course, we eliminate via the colon. So it comes out of the body via the organs of elimination, and then also through this process of autophagy. And it's absolutely inevitable as part of the journey. And the important thing to bear in mind is that it's a temporary phase. You're going to be thin for a week or 2 or 3, however long you go for, however deep you go, the body will bounce back very quickly. And with with dry fasting specifically, a lot of the weight that is lost is water weight. So this weight, like you could be really, really thin, and then you start hydrating, and within a day or 2, you're going to notice the body refilling again and becoming plump and even more healthy looking than before. And the whole thing about skinniness and inability to lose weight all essentially comes down to endocrine health. It comes down to the health of your thyroid. It's very likely, if you are one of these kind of skinny people, that no matter how much you eat, no matter how much you exercise, you always stay skinny. Maybe when you fast, you lose weight very quickly, and the process is kind of challenging very quickly. It's because you're potentially hyperthyroid, which means the thyroid is overstimulated. It's also very likely that you have weak adrenals. People with extremely weak adrenals are often very skinny, and there's invariably some malnourishment going on. And these are the people who lose a lot of weight very quickly when they're fasting. Arnold Ehret referred to this. He basically categorized bodies into two categories. He said you're either a mucus forming body type or you're a uric acid body type. And basically, whenever the body has toxicity within itself, it can choose two different methods of storing that toxicity. It can either store the toxicity in fat cells, and therefore you become a person who puts on weight easily. What we would call, using allopathic medical terminology, they'd say you have a low metabolism. And these people gain weight very easily. I am one of these people. I would gain weight so fast, it was unbelievable. And that's because I would binge eat a bunch of stuff, and then the body would store that toxicity in fat straight away. And these types of bodies are much more likely to retain water, to be susceptible to edema and things like this, because the body is basically dehydrated and hanging onto water and hanging onto fat, and using these water and fat storages as ways of buffering basically the acidity and toxicity levels. The other type of body, what Arnold Ehret refers to as a uric acid body type, it does a slightly different process, and you can actually shift between these two body types by doing keto or doing other kinds of things. By putting the body through various processes, you can go from one to the other, but one is not necessarily better than the other. In fact, I would actually say that it's much easier to fast and detox a person who is of mucus body type than it is to fast a person who is extremely skinny or finds it very difficult to gain weight or loses weight very quickly when they're fasting. These uric acid body types, as Arnold Ehret would say. And what's actually happening within these bodies is that instead of the toxicity being stored at the fat level and water retention going on, which can often look like fat, but it's not, it's retained water. Actually, what happens is that acidity and toxicity is basically stored within the body as uric acid crystals. And uric basically means like, the urine, kidneys. It's this kind of like leftovers of lymphatic filtration, things that are not being eliminated from the body, and they begin to calcify around the joints. And often these kinds of bodies, the uric acid body types, according to Arnold Ehret's classification, very often suffer from things like arthritis, gout, tendon and joint, bone issues because of this calcification. And these uric acid crystals create a lot of gallbladder stones, kidney stones, all sorts of problems. So the concept of not fasting because you fear losing weight actually is counterintuitive, because what happens when you fast as an extremely thin person, even if you're so thin that you're kind of like, I think it's dangerous for me to fast, actually no, it will be extremely beneficial, because firstly, you would be helping support the body in eliminating some of these uric acid deposits and really getting rid of a lot of these concentrated stagnation kind of pockets around the body, and a lot of pain and inflammation in the body will be as a result of this. And secondly, by fasting, you're going to help support the adrenals, the thyroid. I'm going to talk a little bit more about adrenal health in a minute, because it is a question that came up loads actually. And I'm not surprised, so many of us have impacted adrenals as a result of this extremely stressful lifestyle that we all have, and all this unnatural eating and unnatural frequencies and vibrations that our body has to process on an ongoing basis. So yes, by fasting, you may get super thin. People might be really frightened. You might have a lot of backlash and criticism and fear-mongering levied at you. You yourself might look at yourself and think you look like a bag of bones, but actually the body is celebrating an opportunity to eliminate all of this waste from within the body, to really help lower the systemic acidosis, to alkalize the body, and also to support the organs and the glands in order to bring the body back into balance. And very often when I work with clients who struggle to gain weight or to maintain weight, they'll do a fast, they'll get super skinny, but afterwards they'll be able to gain considerably more weight and muscle mass than before, because the reason they're staying skinny is because of the thyroid and because of the adrenals. And when you heal the thyroid and you heal the adrenals, which is inevitable when you fast, then you will automatically have a healthier and more balanced body, and then this will be reflected in your overall health, how vibrant the body looks, how strong the muscles are, and any kind of skinniness to me is an indication of adrenal and thyroid weakness. So using tinctures and the herbs, as we mentioned earlier, to support the body is particularly beneficial for you guys experiencing this. I'm bleeding healthier while fasting than when eating. Yes, because you are not putting all of this extra toxicity and waste into the body, which then has to be eliminated. So it can go one of two ways. Sometimes I'm fasting and I have almost no period. Sometimes I'm fasting and I bleed a lot more than usual. It's kind of what the body chooses to do. But generally, you're going to find that when you fast, your periods or your moon cycle will be lighter because the body's dealing with considerably less input of toxicity. I think women used to fast on their cycles. I have a feeling that this is the case, and intuitively I am guided to fast because I actually find that I have less of an appetite on my moon cycle. It used to be the case that I would have more of an appetite and I would be seeking these kind of heavier, more grounding foods because what was happening, my overall system was more toxic and I was kind of seeking to mitigate that with food. But now that my body's a lot cleaner, I'm actually having completely symptom-free moon cycles, and I'm more and more intuitively guided to fast, and I find the process actually really makes the whole cycle a lot more smooth and a lot easier, especially mentally and emotionally, as well as physically. Thank you, Shelby Madison, for your support. Really happy to be talking about this stuff. Do you think a dry fast could help me to get back my period? I lost it a year ago. Absolutely. Because fasting is the most beneficial thing you can do to help support your endocrine health. So endocrine means hormones. The reason you've lost your period is because of some hormonal recalibration that is taking place for you. Dry fasting is the most potent way of fasting, and therefore it's the most surefire way of starting and kind of really supporting your endocrine system. And you're going to find that in your own time, as you come more and more into balance, the body will start bleeding again. So don't worry about this, hon. It's very common, but it's definitely a sign that something needs to shift. And really the fasting will help that tremendously. But remember, there's no rush, and a lot of it can also be emotional. So really look into maybe some of the emotional reasons why you might have lost your cycle. Maybe look at what was happening around the time when you lost your period. Maybe you were self-sabotaging in some way. Whatever it might be, really feel into not just the physical but the metaphysical aspects. Do you flush with magnesium ever, or colonic enema only? I'm not a fan of magnesium flushes. I find them to be too extreme. The only time I ever use magnesium is topically. And actually, I very rarely recommend supplementation, but actually magnesium spray, which is then absorbed much more effectively through the skin rather than via the digestive tract, is actually super beneficial, especially when fasting. And that is the only use of magnesium that I would ever advocate. And in terms of flushing, you can use things like trifala. You can also use herbs like Cascara sagrada. Drinking pear juice is also very beneficial, and the astringents are also really good at flushing. But for me, I feel colonics are really, really deep, and enemas, if you can't access a colonic, are more than adequate. But just make sure that you're spending at least 24, maybe 48 hours on liquids only before you enter a longer dry fast. If you're only doing a day or something. It's okay to only spend maybe 1 day beforehand, but make sure that you're doing at least a couple of enemas, maybe even 3, without eating any solid food, so that the body really has a chance to eliminate and you're nice and empty before you start. Oh, thank you for my virtual hug, Mark. Lots of hugs back to you. Will the live be saved? I presume so. It's actually the very first time that I've done a live on Instagram, so I'm hoping that it will be automatically saved, but maybe I'll look into that and make sure that I don't press any silly buttons and lose this. But fingers crossed, should all go according to plan, then yes, it will be saved and it will be available to come back to afterwards. Nice. Is fasting with root canals and mercury fillings safe? Yes, but I would recommend that you take binders to help bind. I'm trying to think of a better word, but there it is, to help bind to the heavy metals that are being released. So chlorella, bentonite clay, activated charcoal, and psyllium husks to really help eliminate the heavy metals from the body. And I definitely would suggest that as soon as you can get your mercury fillings removed, Dylan, ideally at a holistic dentist that knows about heavy metal toxicity and mercury toxicity. I went to one in London and I had I think 4 or 5 mercury fillings, and I had them all taken out. And then I did a heavy detox protocol with saunas, with chlorella, with all the binders that I mentioned, and lots of intermittent dry fasting. So there's definitely room for dry fasting with root canals and mercury fillings, but do focus on the binders. Obviously, you're not going to be taking any binders whilst you're dry fasting, but once you've broken your dry fast, make sure to support the body in that way. Another thing that you can do, Dylan, is to take coriander or cilantro tincture, because this helps pull out heavy metals from the body. So any heavy metals that might be circulating around because of the mercury fillings, they're going to be captured by the binders, and the cilantro or coriander will help with that. What do you think about the risk of kidney failure associated with dry fasting? I've done some juice fasting and water fasting, but this has stopped me from dry fasting as my kidneys are still weak. I think the risk of liver failure is extremely low, because you'd have to really go well beyond your comfort levels and body wisdom to go that deep that you actually go into renal failure. But absolutely, you can cause damage to the kidneys if you push this too fast. And really an analogy, Fasting with Trevor used this. If you imagine going out surfing, you've never surfed before, you're going out into the waves, you're hoping to catch a wave and look like a professional surfer, but it's simply not going to happen. You're going to fall off the board and the waves are going to smack you in the face. And until you gently, slowly, consistently and steadily practice how to get onto the board and gently build up the time that you're able to be in the water, before you know it, you're catching waves and you're surfing. But you can't rush the process. Just because you want it in your mind, just because you want the results, just because you might want a particular number, doesn't mean that you're going to just get in the water and surf. So you've got to put in the groundwork. You've got to do these short intermittent dry fasts. Before I went any longer than 3 days, I must have done over 100 24 to 36 hour dry fasts. And before I did, I've done 7 days, 8 nights, twice now. Before I did that, I did so many 2 and 3 day dry fasts, to the point where a 3 day dry fast basically became symptom free for me. And by that I mean uncomfortable symptoms. There were obviously lots of positive symptoms, like connecting to the divine and feeling very creative, and lots of love flowing through me, and feelings of excitement and joy. And all of this is available to us when we fast. It's not about the pain and the negativity. These initial symptoms that we fear about fasting, they go away very quickly when you start doing it consistently and steadily and regularly. And it's basically about daily intermittent dry fasting, 12, 14, 16 hours, building up to as much as the body intuitively guides you. Then doing one weekly dry fast, maybe 24 or 36 hours once a week, maybe once every other week if once a week is too much for you. Maybe once you've been doing this process for like 6 months, you can then start trying to go for longer than 36 hours. Maybe you can go for a 48-hour dry fast. Maybe do 10, 15 48-hour dry fasts before you go for 3 days. And like this, you slowly, gently warm up the kidneys to be able to undergo this process. Because what's happening, I mentioned earlier, the uric acid deposits, these are going to prevent the kidneys from being able to fully eliminate all of the acidity that is being pulled out from the lymphatic system. So before you go on anything longer than 3 or 4 days, you have to have done a lot of intermittent dry fasting to dissolve these uric acid crystals that are basically blocking the kidney ducts and preventing the kidneys from functioning optimally. And fasting, and specifically dry fasting, is amazing for kidney health. Kidney and adrenal health, because the adrenals sit atop the kidneys and they regulate a lot of the systems, the processes of the kidneys. For instance, they release a neurotransmitter and send it to the kidneys and tells them to start filtering the lymphatic system. So there's a strong connection between the kidneys and the adrenals. And the more you dry fast, the more you're basically giving the kidneys a rest. They don't have to constantly be filtering water from the body. And when they're not filtering water, they can get to filtering the lymphatic system. And this is how we start eliminating acidity from the body. So it's essential, if you have weak kidneys, that you start dry fasting. But do it in a really slow and gentle way. Start maybe with just 12 hours a day. And that includes sleep. So if you're sleeping for 8 hours, that's basically 2 hours of dry fasting before bed and 2 hours of dry fasting after you rise. Maybe this is too much. Start with 13 hours, maybe start with 14 hours, whatever it might be. Sorry, I'm going up. What I meant, start with 11 hours, start with 10 hours dry, whatever it might be, right? Just make sure that you're doing it and that you're steadily, consistently, but gently and with awareness, increasing, but doing so only within the comfort levels of your own body. Your body will tell you if you're pushing too far. There's going to be so many different symptoms and signs before renal failure that will tell you that it's time to stop. And it's only when you push because of ego, because of destination consciousness, whatever it might be, attachment to a particular goal, then you'll push through and you'll ignore the signs and gentle nudges of the body that it's time to stop. So I'm going to go through in a minute about some of the symptoms that you want to watch out for when you are dry fasting, to not push too far beyond your comfort zone and cause potential damage to the kidneys or other organs or glands. Would you recommend starting with intermittent dry fasting? Absolutely. And an daily intermittent dry fasting routine is part of any dry fasting schedule. I would never recommend doing dry fasting without having a daily intermittent dry fasting process. It's key. Really, without it, without the daily intermittent dry fasting, you're not providing enough of a foundation for the longer dry fasts. Until you're able to effortlessly intermittently dry fast on a daily basis for like 14, 16 hours, you're gonna struggle with the longer dry fasts. So don't worry about going any longer than a day until you've got this nailed, until you're able to get up and basically not require any liquids for a good 2, 3, 4 hours, because this is a sign that the body is getting cleaner and more alkaline. A sign of thirst first thing in the morning. I have clients who literally have to get up in the middle of the night to drink water more than once. This is a sign of a very acidic body, and you need to flush. And that's really what the water and the thirst is about. The more thirsty one is, the more acidic and dehydrated one is. The less thirsty you are, the more able you are to go effortlessly without even thinking about drinking, the more able you are then to dry fast longer. So I wouldn't even recommend dry fasting long without having the foundation of the daily and the weekly intermittent dry fasts. Will you be posting this in your IGTV afterwards, darling? I really hope so. That's my intention. There's a part of me now that's thinking like, oh, how do I do that? Let's make sure I don't lose it. But if all goes well, then yes, it will be in there. Yes, I've definitely experienced that. But now I found I can rebuild and absorb much better. Yeah, it really does help. And it's so good to see you guys supporting each other and sharing and answering your own questions. Really nice. How long do you need to fast to heal the thyroid and the adrenals? It absolutely depends on where you're at, where your health journey's at, how impacted their function is. what kind of fasting you're doing. There are so many different variables. And I really want to encourage you, Evangeline Francis, to not think about it in this black and white way. Like, I have this thing, I'm going to fast, it's going to be for this amount of time, and then the thing is going to go away. That's not how it works. It's kind of more like a gentle process. It's not going to happen in a linear fashion. It's going to be a little bit more cyclical. And it's not a case of like, I'm going to fast and this is going to happen. It's like really fasting, but surrendering to the wisdom of the body. So you might think that your thyroid and your adrenals need the most support when you fast, but actually your body might think otherwise. Your body might be like, yeah, the thyroid and the adrenals are impacted, but actually the gallbladder, the pituitary, and the lungs are way more obstructed. And actually, this is what I'm going to focus my attention on. And the body will do what the body knows best, which is heal, rejuvenate, eliminate. And the more we can just step out of the way and step out of this kind of idea of, if I do this, this will happen. This kind of almost like an exchange consciousness. If I fast for this long, then I will get this healing. It's just not how it works. The healing happens in this kind of multidimensional flowering that's very difficult to explain until you directly experience it yourself. But absolutely know that this isn't about a short-term solution. Like, I'm going to do this one fast or this 2 fasts and then everything's going to go away and I'll be healthy forever. It's about understanding that in order to eliminate the huge amount of toxicity that we're all carrying because of generational weaknesses that have been inherited, because of all of the pollutants and toxicity that are in the environment right now, because of all of the vaccinations and pills and just all of the craziness happening in the world, it's going to have to take a lifetime in a way. And even that might not be enough. And I'm not saying this to discourage you guys. I'm saying it to emphasize that it's about making this a lifestyle where you're fasting daily on an intermittent basis, where with time you fast more and more and it becomes more and more effortless. And when I first started dry fasting, it wasn't easy to do 12 hours on, 12 hours off, because I was still quite acidic. But I'd done some water fasting already at this stage. It was possible and doable for me, and I found that very quickly I could get to 24 and 36 hours. But for some people it will take longer because of various things they have going on. So it's so difficult to compare and so difficult to answer, but just know that it works, and just know that the more consistent you are with it, the more it's going to work. And now for me, I can dry fast for 7 days, 8 nights. I could never have done that at the beginning. So know that the more you do it, the more efficient and proficient the body will become at it, and the more easy and enjoyable the process will become. And then any underlying symptoms, dis-ease, diagnoses, anything you've received from a doctor, or anything you experience that's negative, like pain or discomfort or whatever, it's going to redress and it's going to go away in its own time. And it's a matter of surrendering to that and allowing what happens naturally to happen in its own divine timing. Let's step out of the way with the mind. Pinched a nerve on my spine today, in tremendous pain. Would you recommend fasting? Bless you, sweetheart. Sending love. Absolutely. Fasting will definitely help. And if you've done a little bit of dry fasting, you have some experience under your belt, then I even would recommend a bit of a dry fast, because that's the most surefire way of giving the body the best opportunity to do the healing that is required. Maybe some massage or body work would be beneficial. You could also try a castor oil pack on the affected area. It's a lot to describe in this Q&A, so I'm not going to go into it, but if you Google castor oil packs, you'll be able to find information on how to use it to help with localized pain. There's also some information about it on the Masterfast website. I think Gino's maybe even done some videos on it, so you can look on YouTube on how to use the castor oil pack for pain. Maybe even just a hot water bottle or something to the area will help with the inflammation. And yeah, the more you can focus on anti-inflammatory foods, as well as the fasting, that will also help. Oh, thank you so much, Susie. She shared, you're such a gift to the world, as we all are, absolutely. And I'm so grateful for you and sharing your experiences. These messages and wisdom are so priceless. Thank you, sweetheart. So good to have you here, and your support means so much. I'm going to quickly check on my battery. Yeah, we're doing good. Hi Josh, Alice. Do you not believe that eating monomeals of high water content fruits, zero overt fats, is enough to cleanse and heal? I don't think so, not for the vast majority of people. I feel that without some intermittent fasting, you're really taking a very slow road. And some people simply don't have the time to take the slow road. I'm not saying that the body doesn't detox when you're eating high water content monomeals of fruits. By all means, go for it. It's basically how I live largely. But I'm telling you from my own direct experience, what comes out of me in terms of emotional release, in terms of stinking, sweaty nastiness, in terms of the urine output, and then in terms of what I eliminate via the colon when I'm dry fasting versus when I'm eating mono fruit diet is in a different league. I'm talking like vile, disgusting things that I never see when I'm mono fruit fasting. And I do enemas and I continue to eliminate. Also the lungs. I spit out so much mucus from my lungs when I'm dry fasting and not anywhere near as much just in my general lifestyle when I'm mono fruit eating. So I don't feel that no detox takes place. Of course detox takes place when you're mono fruit eating, but you're going to get to a point where you're going to plateau and you're going to need to start implementing some intermittent dry fasting, because otherwise you're simply not able to go any deeper. Like you kind of reach a glass ceiling with the fruits. And just with foods generally, you know, like so long as you're eating, you're not really fasting properly. Like food is still gonna slow down the process of elimination tremendously, even if that food is fruit. And obviously fruit makes no mucus impact in the body, but it definitely prevents, because fruit contains water, it contains fiber. You're not giving your digestive system a rest, you're not giving your kidneys a rest. And these are really the two main aspects of why fasting is so powerful. And dry fasting in particular, because it's the kidneys filtering the lymphatic system and eliminating all of those acids. If you're eating mono fruit meals, high water content all day long, I know fruitarians who make videos about having to sleep with a pee bucket next to them because they get up 2-3 times in the middle of the night to pee. That shit ain't right. If you're doing that, then there is no way your kidneys have anywhere near enough time to filter the lymphatic system. So in my experience, my answer is going to have to be no, Josh. Hi Alice, please keep this live. I'm going to try my best. I hope that it doesn't get lost, but it is my very first time doing this. So if anyone has any tips on how to do a live and what button to press when I finish, I probably could have looked into that before I started. That might be beneficial to make sure that I don't lose this. But well, if it's lost, I'm more than happy to recreate the content, but it's not going to happen. I'm going to do my best to try and keep this. Wow, I'm loving how many messages and how many questions are coming through and how many of you have joined live. It's so encouraging and so beautiful to see how deeply passionate you guys are about this system and this amazing process. So thank you for being here. Cabbage juice, yes, very good for helping clear out the body in terms of preparing for a dry fast. Yes, really nice eye heal coaching. I really appreciate that. Oh, I'm reading so much love. Thank you guys. How would you recommend healing the kidneys through fasting? You don't need to do anything. You just need to allow what the body does naturally to go on, and to basically, by dry fasting, you're doing the best to support the kidneys. If you're doing juice cleansing or water fasting, I highly recommend that you also do some intermittent dry fasting. So you're maybe only drinking water or juices or eating mono fruits or whatever it might be for maybe 8 or a 10-hour window, and then the rest of the time you're dry fasting. And then make sure that any colon cleansing you do within your wet window. That way you're giving the kidneys as much of an opportunity to filter and eliminate from the lymphatic system as possible. You can also multidimensional heart, support the kidneys with kidney tinctures and kidney tea. So basically various kidney herbs that can help support the kidneys as they go through this powerful process, because really they are one of the main organs of elimination. You can also support the kidneys with dry skin brushing, again, by just keeping your fluids within a limited and a restrained, kind of a shorter window. In your experience with dry fasting and detoxification, do you find you necessarily go back up the hill of the symptomology you experienced prior to detoxification? Great question. In my experience, no. It's been very much a steady uphill reduction in symptoms and kind of gathering of power and energy. That, however, that's not to be said that some things are not. It depends, what symptoms you're dealing with. So some symptoms may only be subacute or acute, which are the first two stages of degeneration. But if you're looking at something that is chronic, or even degenerative, which is the third and the fourth, then these are going to take longer to be redressed, for the underlying imbalance, whatever it might be, to be redressed. So it might take more than 1 or 2 or 3 fasts. It might take years if it's something really deep. It could be something generational. Apologies. It might be something generational, and it could take a lot of work. It could take a lot of chipping away before you're able to completely clear a symptom. And that's okay. It's about having the patience. But generally, this is more rare. I find that with my own personal experience, symptoms tend to go away with fasting, and they don't tend to come back. If they come back, then it's a sign that maybe some self-sabotaging behavior took place, or maybe you didn't refeed so well after a fast, or maybe a thing I see again and again is a lot of salt consumption after a fast can undo a lot of the positive effects of fasting, in that the body is so shocked that it ends up retaining a lot of water, and a lot of what looks like weight gain after you break a fast is often just to do with salt and edema. So that's really the most common way that I see symptomology basically coming up again. But generally, no. If you don't go back to engaging in the behaviors that caused the symptomology in the first place, so long as you're steady with your fasting, it shouldn't come back. But you never know with these things. It's always a unique experience for each body, depending on the karma, depending on the lifestyle, depending on the history. There's so many different variables to take into account. But overall, my answer would be, yeah, that's kind of been my experience. Thoughts on supplementation? Oh, hi, babe. I live in a cold climate where nutrition value in food is severely lacking. I personally don't recommend supplementation, and I have done a video on this. In fact, I've done a couple of videos, and I think the one on B12 is up on YouTube. I'm also going to I've done one on iron, but in both of those, I basically, Andrea, talk about like supplementation generally and my views on it. So I will upload those, and do check out my YouTube. But generally, I don't recommend supplementing. What I do recommend is that you get as much of the nutrition that is available. So I'm guessing you're back in Canada now and it's winter. You can still find frozen fruits at the supermarket, frozen berries, and you can still have a juice you can make a smoothie with the frozen berries. There's usually bananas available all year round. Invariably, there's citrus available, and you can have orange juice or tangerine juice. You can find kind of local, more seasonal fruits and veggies, things like pumpkins and squashes, and focus more on the veggies, but eat plenty of salads with it, and see if you can make yourself green juices. And you're going to find that there's actually plenty of fresh food that you can eat. And if you do want to supplement, I recommend things like shilajit, or things like chlorophyll, maybe bee pollen. If you don't feel like you want to, I still occasionally eat some bee products. But if you're fully plant-based or not in alignment with that, obviously you don't have to. But these are forms of supplementing with bioavailable nutrition. The vast majority of nutrition that's available via supplementation is inorganic and not available for the body, and basically you're putting something that the body recognizes as toxic, and then the kidneys have to work hard to eliminate that, and it's actually more counterproductive than beneficial. What's your take on coffee? I'm not going to spend too long on this one because I actually have a post that is currently being written, coming up on this very soon, Dal Diamond. So in a few days, you're gonna hear a lot of info on this from me. But generally, my take is that coffee is extremely damaging for the central nervous system, specifically for the adrenals. But really, it puts the whole endocrine system out of whack. It activates the fight or flight response in the body. It puts us in an anxious state. It's extremely dehydrating. And it's actually, without wanting to get too conspiracy theory, it's actually one of the most potent forms of mass control, of manipulation used by the elites to keep us in a fearful and diseased and frightened state of being. Just a few small things to share with you on this. In every single scene of the film Fight Club, there was a Starbucks, either a symbol or a sign or a cup or a neon sign of reflecting off a window in every single scene. Do you know who the main backer behind Starbucks is or was, who founded it? Bill frickin' Gates. It is incredibly insidious. And if there's one thing that I would recommend you eliminate, before I would even say, like, if you're not going to eliminate, animal products, like, at least eliminate coffee. It makes such a difference. And I see a lot of people coming to me who have been on coffee for a very long time, and their central nervous system is fried. It takes a lot of work to undo years and years of coffee abuse. So the earlier you eliminate, the better. I'm going to go into a lot more detail about this in the post. I'm probably going to do a video too, because this is really key. And I know I said I wouldn't talk about it. Here I am talking about it, but I'm so passionate, and it really, really interests me that so many people in this whole kind of healing, wellness, detox space are still heavy on the coffee train. And whenever people come to me and they say, keto works, the snake diet works, I'm like, how many coffees are you drinking per day? And they are nailing the coffees. If you need to drink coffee while you're fasting, then you are really toxic, and it's time that you severely address your diet. And I don't mean you, Dal, I mean I'm talking to the collective you. So yeah, absolutely not a fan of coffee. It's extremely toxic for the body and for the mind, and even more so for the consciousness. It's a tool of mass population control. It keeps us in slavery. It's basically a form of enslavement. I'm not going to go on too much. More to come in future posts. Hi Alice, do you have a group for beginners? I do, Marsha. I have a free group on Facebook. It has 4.6 thousand members, I think, and counting. There's loads of video content on there. There's a free protocol. In fact, 2 free protocols, because it's kind of different stages depending where you're at. Loads and loads of support from an amazing community of people, and you can find that in the link tree in my bio. You'll see free Facebook group. You can click on that. It's called Fasting with Alice. Really easy to search for and find. And then if you're looking for some additional support, there's also a paid members group, and you can also find that in the link tree in my bio. It's called Living Mucus Free, and it's $33 US per month. Which is an amazing deal when you look at the sheer amount of content that is in there. There's like 3 years worth of content and backdated Q&As and so much powerful information for basically like a fraction of one-on-one coaching. It's super powerful. So whether it's the free group you want to go for or the members group or both, I highly encourage you to join it, Marsha, and anybody else who feels inspired, because there's so much information in there. And I always had the intention, I charge for sessions because I value my time and there's an energy exchange that takes place. But I always felt that I want this information in terms of what it is that you need to do to fast safely, to rebuild after a fast correctly, how to live in clean and toxic free ways, how to free your mind of mental slavery, how to break free of the system and all of the ways in which it keeps us stuck in limiting beliefs. I talk about all of this stuff in the group, and it's really, really important to me, the free group this is, that it's all available for free. I don't want anybody to feel like they have to pay for this information, because this is life-changing information. So everything you need and more in the two groups I mentioned. Do check those out, guys. Regarding weight, well, you will gain water and plump out over time. You will lose the weight that is toxicity related, yes, but this could take a while as the body rehydrates. So basically, the weight loss will happen at the rate at which toxicity remains within the system. So when basically cholesterol specifically, but fat generally, is a buffer for acidity and toxicity in the body. So the more toxicity there is in the body, the more fat the body has to retain in order to buffer that toxicity. So the more we fast, the more we eliminate toxicity, the less the body will need to hang on to fat by way of emergency toxicity, storage. And then also with water, I mentioned earlier, the more dehydrated a body is, the more acidic a body is, the more it will retain water. And you'll see swelling, inflammation in the body. So again, as we go with this process of fasting and this mucus-free lifestyle, the body becomes more and more hydrated at the cellular level. The body then needs to hang on to less and less emergency water. Right? And at the end of the day, if you're looking to lose weight, you're not really looking to lose weight. What you're looking to lose is toxicity and acidity, and therefore redress the dehydration. And as this happens, the weight loss will happen effortlessly. And if you carry on intermittently dry fasting daily, weekly, monthly, so maybe, 12, 14, 16 hours a day, once a week, once every 2 weeks, doing a 24 or a 36-hour dry fast, and then once a month, just going for a little bit longer. Let's say 36 hours is your longest dry fast. See if once a month you can go for 40 hours. Then maybe next month, see if you can go for 48 hours, and just once a month, do like a bit of a deeper dive. If you do this, and then maybe once a season, go for something even bigger. Maybe like you can do one of my citrus cleanses. I do this amazing, I offer an amazing 10-day citrus cleanse. And there's lots of intermittent dry fasting, and there's a 36-hour dry fast in the middle. Maybe once a season you can do that. Steady application of these principles of cellular detox is what's going to bring you into balance. And then ideal weight is basically a reflection of that balance, of that cellular hydration. I hope this makes sense. So let me explain. So after you regain water when you dry fast, you will only regain as much as the body needs. And before the dry fast, you were a lot more dehydrated and a lot more acidic. Therefore, the body was retaining more water. You do the dry fast, you drop a lot of acidity and toxicity, and then the body, when it does rehydrate, will rehydrate but will retain less water than before. Because it's less dehydrated, it's less toxic. And then with each dry fast that you do, the body's retaining less and less and less when it refeeds, rehydrates. Apologies. Meta's outside. So really, this is why I'm all about the intermittent. It's like the longer fast's great, but it's about the daily, the intermittent fasting, the weekly intermittent fasting, because you're kind of chipping away slowly at the buildup of acidity. And if you think about it in terms of like a coast, you've got your coastal erosion taking place, and it's the fact that every single day in, day out, the waves are pounding the shore, they're pounding this coastal rock, and it's this constant like ebb and flow of water pounding against it, and it's happening gently. It's just like that's what dissolves and disintegrates and erodes the rock. It's not the fact that once or twice a year a massive typhoon comes. It's actually the steady and consistent application of dry fasting through this daily, weekly, seasonally, intermittent kind of application that really gets the most lasting and balanced, I guess, results. Can we discuss some of the mental and spiritual benefits to fasting? Absolutely. I mean, it obviously differs for each individual, but for me, now is kind of the main reason why I fast. Like, the main physical, mental, and emotional blockages I've had have been released. Not to say that I'm some kind of idealized body or being. There are certainly aspects of my life that I'm still working on. There are aspects of my consciousness that is still clouded by limiting beliefs and by powerless cognitions. And as they come to the surface level of my conscious awareness, I'm able to let go of them and I'm able to vibrate at a higher and higher frequency. So yes, for me nowadays, it's mainly about the spiritual benefits. I'm doing it in order to connect to the divine within myself, to connect to my own intuitive powers and to really, really activate these siddhis that we are all born with. We have these yogic superpowers available to us, and we only are not manifesting them because there is this belief at the deep subconscious level that we are not the divine, that we are not Shiva, that we are not that we are somehow like a rotten apple, that there is this original sin, that yes, that is divine and nature is divine, but we are not. And the more I fast, the more I connect to this spiritual aspect of my divinity, and the more empowered I become, and the more in flow my life is, and then the more effortlessly everything comes to me. Everything that's meant for me comes to me effortlessly. Everything that is no longer serving me leaves me effortlessly, and the whole process becomes joyful and blissful, and tremendous amounts of inner peace are accessed for me when I'm fasting, and I really experience a lot of excitement and joy, and I receive gifts. Always gifts come to me when I'm fasting, whether it's abundance, whether it's new connections, whether it's opportunities that weren't before available to me. And that's not to say that I fast in order to gain things, but the whole concept of the spiritual is that the more one becomes spiritually powerful, the more we become masters of this material universe, the more we become acting like gods in this creation. And I say that not in an egoic sense, more in the sense of you become more and more aware through your direct experience that the self, that God, that guru, they're basically synonymous terms. You realize that the divinity within every aspect and atom of creation is also alive within you. And then you're feeding and nourishing that energy of self-actualization. And then we peel away like layers of an onion, these stories and these thoughts, and we become free. And this is really what fasting is all about for me. Let's see what's happening here. One sec, you guys. There we go. All right. Thank you for that question. I love talking about this stuff, and I am going to share more about the more spiritual benefits of dry fasting specifically as I go on in the later stages of this Cascade fast. So I'm about to enter a 4-day dry fast, and then in a week or so I'm going to enter a 5-day dry fast. So I will make sure to share some more around that. And it's beautiful to see that there is such an interest, not only in the physical, but also in the metaphysical. Not just in what can be seen and felt through our sense perception, but actually through the ways that actually we can access the multidimensional through this portal that basically opens up when we fast. And I posted a little quote, poem, ditty that came through me the other day. It's the latest post on my feed. So feel free to check that out so you can get a bit of an idea of how I view fasting and why I think the spiritual benefits are really where it's at. The initial stuff like healing disease, eliminating acidity, that stuff's like the foundational work. You've got to do that stuff, but really once you get into it, you come to realize that it's all about this amazing kind of multidimensional experience that then fasting kind of helps you access. And it's all about frequencies and vibrations and all of these magical things. Do you ever use magnets? They're also great for pain, inflammation. I personally haven't used magnets, but I have heard of them. I don't experience any pain and inflammation personally, but I'm going to look into it. So thank you, Salah, because I do have clients who experience inflammatory symptoms, and it's cool to have another thing that I can read into and maybe try out for myself and see how it works. So thank you for that tip. I have heard of it, but I hadn't really looked into it. So thanks for the reminder. I'm going to make a note, magnets. I Heal Coaching. You will have a save button when you end it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So post it in IGTV to save it in IG. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, you guys. And how do I end the live? Do I press the red live button to end it? Because I'm guessing if I press the X, that might delete it. I don't want to delete it. So, sorry for being such a noob. I really appreciate your help and support with this, because I do feel it would be beneficial to keep this live for future viewers. Thank you so much, you guys. I really appreciate the technical support. So the missing piece is, how do I end the live? I could have looked into this before. For me, when it's longer than an hour, it's hard to keep it saved. Awesome to listen. Thank you, Matty. Hopefully, I think this is longer than an hour. I don't know how long. Oh, yes, goodness. Coming on to 2 hours. Then yes. I'll do my best to save it, you guys. If it's not possible, then for those of you who have been here, it was meant for you. I fully trust that whatever is meant to be will be. And lessons learned for me, I'm going to do a little bit more techie investigating so that I am more prepared to not lose lives in the future. I love learning. I love experience. Thank you, guys. Catherine, when you're breastfeeding, is it safe to do dry fasting or intermittent dry fasting? It's definitely important to take it very, very easy when you're breastfeeding. And I would say that intermittent dry fasting is okay, but really begin very gently and really, really use the enemas to make sure that you're eliminating and that nothing is getting recirculated. Also really important, I would say, for you to take psyllium husks, bentonite clay and activated charcoal to really make sure that they're binding to any toxicity that might be released so that there is no reabsorption. But I don't feel that it's correct. A lot of people say that you should never fast at all whilst you're breastfeeding or whilst you're pregnant. And I don't think that it's as black and white as that. But you definitely want to make sure that you're doing as much as you can to minimize any reabsorption of any eliminated toxicity. So gently, in fact, extremely gently, baby steps, but that doesn't mean that baby steps don't take you anywhere. So by all means, begin the journey, but baby steps, which is perfect since you have a baby. Much love, sweetheart. I realize that I have just an emotional need for liquid as well as food. Absolutely. It's the emotional attachment we have to liquids and the fear-based mentality around not having liquids goes even deeper than water. And it's what's interesting is that when you're water fasting or juicing or whatever, you can still put something, you can still consume things. So there might not be any calories, not that I believe in the calorie model, but there might not be any nutrition or any energy in what you're consuming if you're doing a water fast, or there's perhaps no fiber or whatever, but at the end of the day, you're still consuming something, and that is very emotionally gratifying if you're feeling something come up. Like you can drink 1.5 liters of water and your stomach feels full, and you at least have done something to distract you from the emotional processing that is taking place. Whereas with dry fasting, there's nothing that you can consume that can shift your energy. Obviously, there are things you can do. You can listen to some nice music. You can go for some body work. You can self-massage yourself. You can smell some essential oils, which I guess on some level is consumption, but not really. Like, you're not physically putting anything into your system. Maybe some molecules of lavender might float up into your nose, but the fact that you're not putting anything into the system can bring up anxiety, because we're so deeply conditioned to always suppress, and we suppress or stimulate through consumption. And there's this like, I must have, and it stems from this limiting belief that we're somehow not enough, that we're not whole. And therefore we feel that we're not enough, and therefore we must complete ourselves with these things that we consume. And the more complete we become in and of ourselves, energetically complete, the less we need to complete ourselves with external input. And then the more clean the body is, the more effective the body is, the more able the body is to access prana from more subtle sources than food or liquids. The body can access prana from water, from sun, from the moon, from the energy and presence of community and other people around you, from meditation, from breath work, from controlling how you're interacting with your intake of air. So many different things you can do. So yeah, plenty here to get stuck into. But yeah, absolutely, you're so right. It's a deep conditioning that has us drinking. And at the end of the day, we all have our limits. There comes a point at which you must drink, otherwise the body goes into auto-intoxication and will eventually die. But like with people who live at very high altitude, and they become more and more efficient at, with each generation, at oxygen utilization, and they're able to live where there is a lot less oxygen than at sea level. And these people are inherently stronger and hardier. And when us mere mortals go up to their high altitude cities and villages and whatever, we don't feel well. We have headaches. It takes us a long time to climatize, because our bodies are not so efficient at utilizing oxygen, because we've had an abundance of it. They've had less oxygen, and therefore they become more able to process and assimilate oxygen. Therefore their body is more efficient. In the same way with liquids. So dry fasting makes your body more and more efficient at hydrating itself internally, using these internally metabolized waters. Because what's happening when you're dry fasting, and this is one of the questions on my list, and I'm realizing now that I'm probably not going to have time in this live to get to all of these questions, but I really do feel that I answered a lot of the questions that you guys put to me in these live questions. So it's, it's really, really important that you don't go too far with the dry fasting, because until the body is able to metabolize its own waters in this way, that you don't overdo it. It's like going from sea level to the top of Everest straight away and expecting to be able to breathe. You're not going to be able to. It's about slowly climbing and acclimatizing and getting used to the body being more and more I'm not going to say H2O, H3O2 efficient. So H2O is kind of the water that we think of as water, but this is actually dead. H320 is living, structured water. And the more we dry fast, the more we hydrate the body, because the body becomes more and more efficient at utilizing the H320 that we then flood into each and every one of our cells as we rehydrate after a dry fast. So this is really how I can explain why dry fasting is so effective, and why really the more you dry fast, the more you're hydrating. And it's because of these internally metabolized waters. I mentioned earlier that we have these fat cells, and much like camels, the way camels are able to store water in their hump, the hump of the camel is largely fat. And therefore, the way that the camel accesses its water storage when it needs to, when it's dehydrated, is it starts to burn off the fat in its hump. And something like 60-70% of the fat cell is water. So as well as water, there's toxicity, there's all sorts of other stuff that is also stored in there, kind of like as a buffering unit. And then the body breaks down these fat cells in order to access the water, eliminates the toxicity, and then is able to hydrate itself using these internally metabolized waters. And these waters are so clean, so perfect. They've basically been distilled by your own body for you. They are basically the ultimate form of H3O2, living structured waters metabolized by your body for your body. And this water goes deep into the cells and rehydrates the cells. And this is how, through dry fasting, we increase cellular hydration. And what then happens after we break the dry fast, the body is then more efficient at utilizing hydration. And the more you dry fast, the less the body needs, much like the people living at very high altitudes. And it's this way of continually teaching the body to train to metabolize its own internal waters. And the result is that you simply need less external water. You just have more and more internally created water. And then you get to a point where you're so clean, you're vibing at such a high frequency that, like Jesus in the Bible, or some of the prophets in the Old Testament, John the Baptist, etc., so many different figures, the Buddha, he fasted. But specifically it says in the Bible that Jesus and John the Baptist both dry fasted for 40 days and nights in the desert. And when I was younger and I read this, I remember thinking about it and thinking like, it can't be true. It must be some kind of metaphor. It must be like only something enlightened masters can do. I've now come to realize that this happened. This was real. And imagine how clean the system is to be able to dry fast for 40 days and 40 nights and basically be so empowered and so self-sufficient that you're functioning and living and hydrating yourself from your own internally metabolized waters. And then when you start rehydrating, you do so again with living structured waters, H3O2. This time, not only from your own body, but from coconuts, from fruits, from sugarcane juice, from all of these other beautiful ways that nature provides living structured water for us. So it's such a magical and potent process that is underway here. Do your kidneys filter? How long did it take for you to start seeing sediment often? My kidneys are definitely filtering now. I shared a picture of my filtration in a post that I did after my last 7-day dry fast. So I'll put it here, a note, because I can share it in the stories. Or I can even send you a picture, Matty, and then you can see how my filtration went throughout the 7 days, because I kept all of my urine output for the whole of the 7 days. And for me, I had already done quite a lot of fasting when I discovered dry fasting, and I'd already done 2 10-day water fasts, and I'd already done a 33-day juice cleanse, and I had also done a few kind of shorter juicing periods, but 33 days was really the longest I'd gone for. So when I discovered dry fasting and I started testing for kidney filtration, I already had it. So it's difficult for me to say how long it would take you to get it, but really, once you're doing steady intermittent dry fasting, I wouldn't say it could your average person would probably need less than a few weeks, maybe a couple of months if you really have some stubborn kidney issues, but I really don't see it taking any longer than that. And then the steadier you go, the more powerful the kidneys become at pulling out waste from the lymphatic system, the more and more filtration you see. And then also the longer you go into the dry fasts, the more and more filtration you'll see. And I certainly noticed a huge leap between days, let's say day 5 and then day 6 and then day 7 of my dry fast in terms of like how much elimination via the urine. By the end, it was something like a quarter or a third of the jar was full of this white sediment by day 7. So it's super potent. Let me know if I can assist with this any further. Maybe I can do some more posts on kidney filtration if you guys like. Let me know. Before I forget, please would you consider a live or a video on psychedelic healing if that's something you have experience with? Absolutely, Susie, I do. And I've done a video on my experience with ayahuasca, which is already in the free Facebook group that I mentioned. And I will also upload it onto YouTube. I've experienced a lot of resistance with YouTube, so I didn't really do anything about it for years. But I'm getting more and more people coming to me now who are leaving Facebook because of all the nonsense with, I won't get into it. People are leaving Facebook and more people are wanting YouTube. Actually, lots of people are leaving YouTube as well. So I'm going to start posting on BitChute as well as YouTube. But for now, I'm doing YouTube. So I'm slowly kind of uploading some of my old videos, and I will make sure to put the one on ayahuasca that I did up so you can check it out, and I'll put a link in my stories. And I'm more than happy to do a live as well. I think that's a really, really good idea. So yes, watch out for one of these lives in weeks to come. Thank you for your suggestion, Han. It would be a good idea to bring out a book or something like that about what to do after breaking a fast, as I know I've gone into eating something stupid like nuts after a fast. Not the best. Yes, it's not always easy to break a fast, particularly when you have a past history of self-abuse or self-sabotage or disordered eating. And I will certainly take your advice and feedback and do some more content in terms of how to break the fast and how to do so in a really self-loving way, and how to rebuild after a fast, because it's almost harder to eat clean after a fast, because there's just this huge build-up that takes place during the fast where we kind of idealize food and we put it on a pedestal and we daydream and we fantasize, and finally we break the fast, and a lot of the patterns that we've let go of in a way, they resurface, and it's like the opportunity, the universe comes in and it gives us an opportunity, like, which way do you want to go? Do you want to go back or do you want to go forwards? And it gives us these kind of cravings because it's the option that we have, and we can either choose to self-sabotage or we can choose to take a new way, a new method forward. And a really helpful gem essence, a really helpful technique that worked for me was that with every fast that I underwent, and it could be something short like a 3-day juice cleanse or a 7-day juice cleanse, or maybe I try to do a 10-day citrus cleanse every season. So, you know, like a few times a year, let's say I'll be fasting and doing different things. And each time I will take one item, just one item, and I will eliminate it afterwards and I won't have it again. So by way of an example, I kind of was fasting over the years and I eliminated animal products right away, and I eliminated bread and rice right away, but I continued with the mucus lean items. So I was eating a lot of beans and lentils and things like quinoa and buckwheat pancakes and chickpea pancakes. And it's absolutely okay to rely on the mucus lean foods as you're transitioning. In fact, it's essential. I think without it, you move too fast, you move without foundation, and in the long term, it can actually be more detrimental. Again, slow and steady. But actually, a way to ensure that you're not plateauing with the mucus lean foods is to ensure that with each cleanse you do, you pick just one thing and then you don't have it again. So I eliminated beans pretty much slowly. Like I stopped having butter beans, because I used to really love butter beans, but I found out that they were really the most heavy and kind of fatty of the beans. So I was like, after this fast, I'm just not going to have any more butter beans. If I have cravings for beans, I have some chickpeas, I'll make some kidney beans, I'll make some whatever, but I'm not going to have any butter beans. Another fast, and then I eliminated lentils. I was like, okay, I'm not going to have lentils. I'm obviously not having any more butter beans. And like this, slowly, over about a year or a year and a half, I eliminated all the beans and all the lentils, to the point at which I now only eat chickpeas. So I sometimes still occasionally eat chickpeas, not much, maybe once or twice a month, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending where I'm at. But really, it's a very rare occasion. But when I do, I might eat some hummus, I might eat some falafel. You know, I still eat some of these foods, but I do so in a really integrated and healthy way. I eat them with a salad. I make sure that they're low in salt, or completely no salt if I can help it. I always make sure it's, you know, my only meal of the day. I invariably do more colon cleansing the next day to help support the body eliminate. I have plenty of fiber. I don't drink water before or after a meal to really help and assist with digestion. I food combine properly. So I eat these mucus forming foods, but I've largely eliminated all the other beans. And there will come a time at which I will no longer want chickpeas at all. And then I will eliminate those completely. And then the heaviest food I eat will be some vegetables, maybe some vegetables with a little bit of oil. I very rarely eat vegetables with oil, but I'm trying to think, you know, what would be a bit heavier. And that's the way to do it. Just slowly, gradually use fasting and then breaking the fast as a way to constantly refine your transition diet. And this is how you constantly transition. And you know, sometimes you want something a bit heavy and a bit more grounding and a bit more delicious and a little bit out of the ordinary. Like, I'm done with watermelon. I've been juicing watermelon for like 20 days. I really want a salad with beans in it, right? If you eliminate a bunch of beans and only have chickpeas, you've still done yourself a great service. And then every time you want to rely on something heavy and you're like thinking, okay, a few times a week, I'm going to have a bit of a heavier meal because that's just where I'm at. And that's okay. You know, you accept the stage of the journey where you're at, but you do so in a way that is still eliminative. Because it's like, well, I'm not having any lentils. I'm not having any kidney beans. I'm not having a mixture of 12 different types of beans that are inherently more difficult for the body to digest. I'm having only one type of bean. It's a chickpea. And oh, look, I've soaked it for 36 hours. So it's kind of slightly sprouted and a lot of the phytic acid is gone. And oh, look, I've cooked it and I've taken away the skin, which actually is very difficult for the body to digest. And when I'm cooking it, I'm not using any oil, I'm not using any salt. Or if I want to, it's only minimal amounts. And it's in this way that you can basically learn how to practice being self-loving when you break a fast and not going into self-sabotage mode. Because it's okay to want to eat heavier things, but when you do so and you're still walking a balanced middle path rather than swinging from one extreme to another of like fasting, excessive binging, and just kind of being really out of alignment, the more you can break the fast and just be like, okay, I want something slightly heavier. What's the lightest heavy food I can eat that would still bring comfort and ease and soothe my emotions? Because it's still okay to use food as an energy management tool, but how do I do so in a self-loving way? In a way that's always got me steadily climbing this mountain rather than plateauing. So I hope this helped, hon. What if you use your menstrual cycle with water fasting? I would suggest that what's happened in that case is that your fast has triggered some healing of the endocrine system. So some glandular healing is taking place. Likely it's to do with the adrenals because the adrenals produce estrogen and they regulate a lot of the ovarian function. So it's very likely that some adrenal healing is taking place. And sometimes with healing, a symptom comes up to the surface and it looks like it's a bad thing, but actually it's not. It's a positive. It's something that shows that actually healing is taking place. So it's not something to fear. It's really something to align with and understand and trust that the body knows what she's doing. And if as a result of the fast, the body has chosen to hang on not eliminate menstrually for a while, then trust in the wisdom of the body and trust that your cycle will come back. And Nikki, if it doesn't come back in a few months, then please reach out to me and let me know, and maybe we can have a look at what else could be happening for you that could be bringing this. It could be emotional, it could be some underlying condition or whatever. So it's not something to worry about, and it's, to me, a sign of healing. That's how I see it. Hi, Jeff. Oh, thank you, Josh. He said, yes, Alice, source energy using you as a vessel. Everything on point and resonating so much. Thank you so much, Divine Mirror. I'm so glad this is resonating. Any thoughts on healing from severe PCOS? Absolutely, you can heal from it. And I highly recommend Estimated Agency that you connect with Sarah Armid. She's a dear sister of mine, and I can share with you, if you don't find her, I can show you her details. It's Sarah, Armide, Armid. And she herself has recovered from PCOS and used fasting and a lot of womb clearing and other kind of energy work to really, really clear through her system. And basically, you are going to learn a lot from her. I personally don't have any direct experience with PCOS. I'm obviously going to advise fasting and cellular detox and this mucus-free lifestyle. But if you go to Sarah, she will actually be able to guide you and coach you. And I'm sure she's done a lot of specific content on this. Check out her YouTube channel. She's also on Instagram. So, yeah, she's a really, really wonderful and beautiful sister, and she works with a lot of women recovering from this. A lot of it, largely, again, is to do with the adrenal weakness. So you're looking at supporting the adrenals, adrenal tinctures, eliminating coffee, keeping the salt as low as possible, because coffee and salt are the two most stressful things for the adrenals, aside from lack of sleep and lifestyle factors, and really look to incorporate things like pranayama, Buteyko breathing, meditation, flotation tanks, body work, all these different ways of supporting the relaxation of the central nervous system to help ease the tension on the adrenals. Sending you love, hon. Morning drink enslavement. Coffee. Yes, absolutely. Multidimensional heart. Does dry fasting help Candida? I read that you said that citrus feeds Candida. What can you replace that with? Could you still do lemon, lime, water, and enemas? I'm grateful for all the knowledge. It's not so much that citrus feeds Candida. And I've done a video on this, and I will also upload this onto YouTube. I don't think it's up there, but it's definitely up in the free Facebook group, and you can check that out. So what happens is, I'll try and keep this brief because we're getting pretty close. Yeah, we've gone over 2 hours now. I'm going to wrap up soon, basically, but I'm going to answer this because I've started. So basically, Candida is a homeostatic process of the body. What I mean by homeostasis is the body has to keep itself in balance. If the blood sugar levels go too high, if the blood oxygen levels go too low, if all these different salt, potassium, electrolytes, if these things are not balanced correctly, very quickly the body can go into shock, it can go into seizures, it can go into comas. So it's very, very essential for the body to keep itself in homeostasis. If for whatever reason the body is not super effective at processing and assimilating blood sugar, and this could be because of adrenal weakness, it could be because of pancreatic weakness, it could be because of poor food combining fat with sugar. And basically what happens is that the receptors of that basically assimilate the sugar are either covered in fat and therefore are unable to receive the sugar, or for some reason, because of the pancreatic or adrenal weakness that I mentioned, there's simply a spike in blood sugar levels. The body cannot allow this to continue for a very long time. Otherwise, it would set off all these other systems and create a lot of disharmony within the system. So Candida comes in. And Candida is a type of bacteria that feeds on sugar. And we all have very low levels of Candida within us at any one time, because they are an inherent homeostatic process, as I mentioned. And then whenever there are spikes in blood sugar levels and those spikes are consistent, the Candida comes in as a defense mechanism to basically feed on the sugar. So it's not so much that citrus stimulates Candida. I've had other people say to me that melons stimulate Candida. What I tried to say when I said that was that if you eat things like citrus and melons or other fruits and it's too difficult because the Candida symptoms are too intense, then slow down a little bit with the super sweet fruits and things that are very high in sugar, and maybe focus on green juices, maybe focus on detoxing with intermittent fasting, but maybe focusing more on the veggies, maybe using apples, pears, other slightly less sugar-rich fruits, basically. So it's not so much that the Candida feeds on the citrus or feeds on the melon, is that you want to minimize if the symptoms are very intense and you're looking to obviously manage symptoms and get on with your life. You want to avoid those just temporarily if the symptoms are too intense. But actually fruits and rehydrating with astringency like citrus or with watermelon juice is actually very beneficial in helping support the system. And what happens is that you don't want to kill the Candida. I hear this over and over again. I need to kill my Candida. I've got a Candida bloom. How do I make it go away? I've got Candida problems. I've got parasites. The Candida is a parasite. No, the Candida is an essential process without which the body would potentially be in peril. And you want to be very grateful that you have this Candida. What you want to look at is the underlying root cause of why there are these spikes in blood sugar levels, and why what you can do basically to help mitigate those. So fasting is extremely supportive for both the adrenals and the pancreas. And it's basically this that invariably causes spikes in blood sugar level and or poor food combining. And again, there's a very detailed video with charts and everything on food combining on the free Facebook group, and I don't think it's on YouTube yet, but I will upload that so it's available, and I will share the links with you guys. And as I go, I will be uploading more and more of the old videos onto YouTube as well. And you're going to find that as you detox and as you eliminate and get rid of the toxicity that is perhaps stifling the optimal function of the adrenals and the pancreas, the issue will resolve itself. And also make sure you don't combine your fat and your sugars. Always eat fruit on its own. If you're going to have a meal that contains some fat, don't have any sugar in that meal. And then you're not going to have this poor combination of fat and sugar, which basically prevents the assimilation of the sugar within the blood. Thank you, Multidimensional Heart. My goodness, there are so many questions. I think what I'm going to have to do, you guys, is draw this live to a close and maybe do a part 2, because there is so much in here. Have you ever had a Kundalini experience? Yes, many, and I'm more than happy to share about this in future videos. I'm going to do a live on the spiritual side. Let me put that down, and we can talk about that some more then. And I'm also happy to do a second live on dry fasting, because there's so much I haven't got to answer. I had a bunch of questions that you guys put to me before, and it's so beautiful that there is so much to talk about. But I think 2 hours is pretty long. I don't want to keep you guys much longer, but let me see if I can quickly get to some of the questions. Top 3 things to support parathyroid weakness. Any specific herbs? Yes, your understanding is correct. There aren't really any outright herbs for parathyroid, but you can, if you're not too on the vegan train, you can use the glandulars. I personally have not used them because I don't have parathyroid or adrenal or other glandular weakness that is intense enough to warrant going there, and I just don't feel attracted to it. But if the symptoms are intense, you could combine some fasting with taking some of the glandulars, which are basically like tinctures, but they contain some bovine hormones. So if you don't feel in alignment with that, I completely understand. It's something I myself haven't tried, but it really, really does work. And I've heard from clients who have tried it. I've heard a lot from Dr. Morse, who has some very positive results with this. Also in the Master Fast group with the glandulars, they do work. So if you feel like this is what you need to do, then go for it. Another thing that really, really helps with thyroid generally and parathyroid too is focusing on healing this chakra. So the Vishuddha chakra is all about expression. So like do some work, some self-inquiry on ways maybe that you're not fully expressing, maybe ways that you're people-pleasing and saying yes when you mean no and no when you mean yes. Maybe you are keeping yourself little and small and maybe not fully speaking your truth for whatever reason, like whatever way you're not expressing. Maybe you have this creation that's wanting to come out of you, but you're stuck in a job where your talents are wasted. Whatever it might be, there is some way in which you're not expressing. So energetically focus on that. Focus on your expression, and doing things like chanting, singing is extremely beneficial for helping to move any stagnant and stuck energy here. So the Bij mantra for the Vishuddha chakra is hum. So you can go like this, hum. I could go longer, but I don't want to. And then just do this, hum, for like 5-10 minutes a day, maybe more than once a day, and really, really commit to it, to moving this vibration. And then also singing, any kind of chanting is helpful. When you chant Aum, it's like, that's in the stomach, O is in the chest, and then is in the throat. So automatically when you chant Aum, which is basically the combination of all three sounds at once, you see here how it really, really activates here. So this is a very big tip. And also working with crystals. Crystals are very, very powerful. And the color for this chakra is the color blue. So any blue crystals and stones that you resonate with, things like lapis lazuli are really powerful, kyanite, aquamarine. These are the three that come to mind, but there are others. Really look into what kind of stones, crystals you can use to help support the healing here. And you can even wear like a necklace or a mala or things that are around the neck. So you've literally got this crystal and you're wearing it exactly on that chakra. You can also put a crystal that supports the Vishuddha chakra under your pillow as you sleep at night. Psilocybin ever. I know folks who have transformed their lives with therapeutic doses. I've personally dabbled considerably in that field because I'm a very inquisitive person. I'm a kind of an investigator, archetypally. And as soon as I learned that such things as magical mushrooms exist and truffles and herbs that alter your consciousness are available, I really went for it and I explored, and it's been incredibly healing and beneficial. That having been said, I don't believe in abusing them and I don't believe in taking them recreationally. So like you said, therapeutic sessions. More on this in a future talk. I think I'm going to do a live on plant medicines as you guys suggested. So thank you for that. I'm going to quickly scroll through and see if there are any outstanding questions before I wrap up. Thank you, Matti Papini, for confirming about the X. I'm going to do that. I can either save it on the phone, post it as IGTV, or delete it. I'll post it onto my IGTV so you guys can see it. Thank you, guys. 2 hours, right? Oh. How do you recommend taking bentonite clay? It's so expensive. We'll have a video on how to suspend our own clay in water. I found that bentonite clay is actually reasonably inexpensive to buy if you're not buying a branded one. I don't know about Soon's number 7. I will look into that, but I have no experience. I buy it here where I live on Kopangan, really, really cheap. So make sure when you take it that you don't use a metal spoon or a metal cup or anything like this, because the bentonite clay will pick up basically toxicity from that. So make sure you're only using a wooden spoon or whatever. And I would start with maybe like a quarter to a third of a teaspoon mixed in some water or some juice. Maybe also take some activated charcoal at the same time. You can also take some psyllium husks at the same time. If you're taking the psyllium husks, then mix it with at least, I would say, half a liter of water. So you have maybe a quarter of a teaspoon of bentonite clay, a quarter of a teaspoon of activated charcoal, optional, and then maybe 1.5 teaspoons to 2 teaspoons of psyllium husks. Shake it all together and take it in a long drink, but drink it quick, otherwise the psyllium husks will gelatinize and not be very tasty and kind of difficult to eat. But if you're only taking the bentonite clay on its own or with activated charcoal, then you don't need that big volume of water, because the water is required for the psyllium husk to absorb as it passes through. You can just take it in a small bit of water or juice, and there you go. Easy. The affordable beachside massages. Can you dry fast if you are sick? When one is sick, that is the best time to dry fast. That is the optimal time to dry fast, because that's the body telling you, I'm eliminating. Sickness is always a process of detox. What's happening is that there is too much toxicity, too much mucus, whatever, and the body's using the elimination pathways, whether it's via the lungs or whatever, via the skin. And this is basically what sickness is. So if you're sick, fasting is the best thing you can do. Dry fasting may be a little bit intense if you've never dry fasted before. So maybe I would recommend starting with some juice fasting, maybe just doing a bit of intermittent dry fasting. But if you have some experience, then absolutely dry fast. And you're going to see that sometimes, you're in a sickness, like a fever that is so intense that you're basically like in and out of consciousness, and there isn't even any desire or even thinking about drinking. You can easily dry fast for 24 hours during a fever and not even think about water. So that's a sign that the body is actually asking for a fast. So I think you can definitely dry fast if you're sick, but I wouldn't push it. Definitely go gently. And another big tip for when you're sick is enemas. Enemas and colon cleansing help support the body tremendously when the body is in this process of elimination. Raw Angie, when I did a 23-day water fast, huge congrats, honey. That's wonderful. I broke with melon, but I was dreaming of junk foods. Yeah. You know what's happening is the parasites, as they're dying, they're begging you to eat the foods that nurture and nourish them. And they want you to eat the junk because that's what they feed on. They feed on acidity. And as they're dying, because they're hooked into your central nervous system, these parasites are like, feed me the food. And it's kind of the last ditched attempt to get you to basically make your internal environment suitable for them to live, because they know they're on their last legs and they're about to die. So really a lot of the cravings that people have when undergoing fasting is down to parasites, not down to really you wanting that food. I think the body actually very rarely craves junk foods. Of course, we can crave the emotional consequences of eating junk food, which is numbness, suppression, food coma, and I can't think about my sad stories while I'm in a food coma. So yes, I can see how emotionally we can crave it, but the body physically never craves it. It's always the parasites. Thank you for sharing that, sweetheart. Is it safe to dry fast if you have gallbladder or kidney stone? Absolutely, Susie, and I highly recommend it, but go really gently. Start with the intermittent dry fasting. And for you, I highly recommend chanca piedra tincture. So chanca piedra is a specific herb that is really, really known to be potent in breaking down the uric acid builds up that basically create gallbladder and kidney stones. So focus on kidney herbs. You you can get from Dr. Morse and from Master Fast specific kidney tinctures that contain a lot of herbs specifically for the kidneys. You can also get kidney tea, so that whenever you fancy a herbal tea, you're having something that supports the kidneys, and then focusing on this chanka piedra alongside an intermittent dry fasting schedule and lots of astringency. This will support the breakdown of the acidity buildup. And then you're going to find the more you clear the ducts of these stones, the more able you're going to be to effortlessly dry fast. Binging after fast is my weakness. Yes, it's very, very easy to self-sabotage after a fast, and a lot of the old behavioral patterns come in, and it's something that requires practice, which is why I advise and recommend this dry fasting so much, this dry fasting cascade that I'm doing, because at the moment I'm alternating dry fasting with days of fruits and juice. And when you're dry fasting, you don't even think about food. Like food, you like whatever. All you're thinking about is juices and liquids and like refreshing your throat and hydrating your system. The idea of eating something salty or fatty or oily or junk food while you're dry fasting is simply it's not a possibility. All the body wants is fruit, is watermelon, is grape juice. And then you come to realize, that's really what's nourishing me. And then when you break the dry fast, but you're in a cascade, right? So you've only got 1 day or 2 days or 3 days or 4 days or 5 days to rehydrate, and then you're dry fasting again. There's zero desire to eat junk food, because you know that in a day's time you're starting dry fasting again, and you're going to feel so much worse if you enter the dry fast with a bunch of oily, salty, processed foods or whatever in your body. And for me, this is one of the greatest benefits of dry fast cascading. The fact that it supports this breaking of the fast, but in a really healthy and integrated way, because you're basically just breaking with juices and just breaking with hydration and fruits that are high water content, and you're doing loads of enemas and you're really flushing through the system. And I'm on day 11 now. I haven't had a single craving for cooked food or anything mucus forming. In fact, the only thing my body wants is hydration and fruits. And this is why I think dry fasting is so beneficial for eating disorders. And I find people coming to me a lot accusing dry fasting of being an eating disorder, etc., etc. And actually, the converse is true. The more you dry fast and then break the dry fast, because you're not going to want to eat salty foods after a dry fast. You're going to want to hydrate, and you're going to want watermelon, and you're going to want grapes, and you're going to want to stick to that. And then you go again into a dry fast, and then again you break with hydration rather than self-sabotage. And before you know it, you've done 30 days and you haven't eaten any salt, any oil, any mucus-forming foods. And then it becomes a lot easier to behave in more self-loving ways. And you've eliminated a lot of the parasites that give you a hard time in terms of breaking the fast and wanting you to eat naughty foods. I would also like to hear you on oat milk if possible. I don't recommend oat milk because oat milk is made of oats, which contains gluten. Oats are, mucus, not super heavy mucus forming like rice, but still mucus forming. And I don't recommend them. I think if you are gonna make a milk, I recommend hemp seed milk. This is really my ideal, or coconut milk. Coconut milk is the ideal, or if you're going to have something else, have hemp seeds. But I really don't recommend oat milk. You guys, so many amazing questions. Oh, hi Sophie. Beautiful to connect with you, Han. Oh, thanks, love. Best thing for a fatty liver is detox, fasting, and eliminating fats from your diet. Also using herbs to support the liver, things like schizandra, milk thistle, lots of other beneficial liver herbs. And yeah, kind of, I often find fatty liver and liver issues, there's often a lot of suppressed anger. So have a feel into where you're maybe not releasing some anger, maybe where you're harboring some bitterness, maybe where you haven't forgiven someone or yourself, and do some work on the energetics around that as well. Blue lace agate. Yes, this is an amazing crystal for the Vishuddha chakra. Thank you so much, Pillion Air. That's really, really good. Yes, absolutely. Hello from Kuwait. Hi. Hello from Thailand. Okay, I finally reached the end of the live questions. Wow, you guys, I did not expect so much input from you. It's really been amazing. I'm probably going to have to come back to a lot of these other questions, but there is one thing that I wanted to share, which is around breaking the dry fast and how to do so correctly and when to do so and knowing when to do so. So let me quickly check my battery. Yes, I'm okay. So one last thing really before I wrap up. Really important when you break a dry fast that you hydrate. And people have asked, shall I do it with water? Shall I break with water and then juice? In my experience, I feel much better when I break dry fasts with astringent liquids. So astringency really helps to pull out mucus waste, toxicity, etc. from the body, because it basically causes a constriction of the body tissues. And as you constrict, it's a bit like this towel that's being squeezed. You're going to squeeze out waste. And the astringent juices, you're looking at citrus, you're looking at watermelon, pomegranate, cranberry, dark purple grape juice, and then really whatever you're having, adding lemon and or lime to it will add a lot of astringency. Another really, really potent astringent that is widely available and very affordable is Triphala, this incredible Ayurvedic supplement, which you can take dissolved in water, or you can be super hardcore and dissolve it in pure lemon or lime juice, or you can mix lemon and lime with water and then take the Triphala. And the combination of astringent juices and some Triphala will really, really help with the elimination. And when you're breaking an intermittent dry fast, it's okay to have an enema. Like let's say you've done a 16 or an 18-hour dry fast, 20 hours, even anything up to about 24 hours. It's okay to break the dry fast with an enema and not rehydrate first. But if you've done anything longer than 24 hours, it's really, really essential that you rehydrate the body first for at least 2 or 3 hours and with at least 2 liters of astringent juices. And after this, make sure you go and do an enema that day. But don't do it too quickly, because otherwise the body might absorb some of the water in the enema, because the colon is very absorbent. And if the body is dehydrated, it's going to take water from any available source and it will take it from inside your colon. So make sure that you're well hydrated when you're breaking a longer dry fast. And make sure that you're really colon cleansing well. So I recommend the big enema bags, a 4-liter enema bag. And if you haven't got a 4-liter enema bag, make sure you do at least 2 or 3 trips. And even with 4 liters, guys, when I broke my 7-day, 8-night dry fast, I did 16 liters enema. I was in there for like 2.5 hours. I filled up my 4-liter enema bag 4 times. And still, the nastiness that was coming out of me after 16 liters through me was off the chain. And for the next 2 or 3 days, I continued to do at least 12 liters enemas per day, sometimes 2 per day, and still the most ridiculous amount of filth was coming out of me. So you're going to go deep with dry fasting. You're going to eliminate a lot from the colon. So make sure that you put plenty of water through you. I would say after a 36-hour dry fast, you want to put at least 6, maybe 8 liters through you. Or go for a colonic. When you go for a colonic, they can put like 60 liters through you, and it's really potent, really beneficial. So this is absolutely key when it comes to breaking the dry fast. Make sure that you're colon cleansing. Do not dry fast without doing colon cleansing. Really essential that the bowels are emptied beforehand. So prepare for a dry fast by doing at least 1 day of water, of liquids or juices, and at least 2 enemas. before, so you're nice and empty, and then make sure you break by hydrating properly, and then doing at least an enema or some colonics, or plenty of enemas, and keep doing the daily enemas for the next few days, and continue to stay on liquids and fruits and astringents for as long as possible afterwards, to continue the kind of eliminative processes that you've already started with the dry fast. So really, really key that you bear this in mind, you guys. Another thing to bear in mind, if you're very new to dry fasting, this can help. I personally don't engage in it anymore, but when you break your dry fast, before you have any juice or anything like this, you can take some lemon juice and dissolve a little bit of bicarbonate of soda in there. I'm talking a little bit, like a quarter or a third of a teaspoon, something like that. And drink that first. And put some water with it. It's going to fizz. You can even put it in some juice. But if you take the bicarb and then also the lemon, which is very alkaline once inside the body, it will help neutralize a lot of the acidity that has built up around the kidneys and, in the body. And if you're very new to dry fasting, this might be beneficial in the early days to help support the eliminative processes of the body. Or if you've had some kind of kidney pain, or if the dry fast hasn't been easy for you, then do that. But personally, it's not something I would continue to do going forwards, because you're basically putting bicarb into the stomach, which is going to neutralize some of the stomach acids. And ideally, you don't want to do that. But in the early stages, it can be beneficial. Some people recommend also taking apple cider vinegar as part of this concoction. I personally don't, because apple cider vinegar has a pH of 2. It's acidic, and it's also fermented. So it's going to be putting yeast into the body, and yeast is not beneficial to the body at all. So avoid apple cider vinegar if possible. The other thing I wanted to say is about breaking the dry fast and knowing when to do so. So I've done a video on this in my free Facebook group that I mentioned, and I'm also going to stick it on YouTube. Basically, breaking the dry fast, largely it's going to be a mind game. It's the mind that's going to want you to stop the dry fast, not the body. Invariably, it's freaking out, it's panic, it's anxiety, it's all sorts of things coming up that stop you, and then you break the dry fast. But there are things to look out for that are really, really essential. So stay strong, stay determined, really question the validity of your thoughts and beliefs. Like, am I really dying? Apologies, I had a call. Am I really going to die of thirst? And the truth is that you're not. Very often these are fears that can be overcome with some meditation, with some breath work, with some relaxation. But there are some mental states that once they become, or emotional states, that once they become too intense, it's definitely a sign to break the dry fast. So I've written here a list, because I really don't want to miss any of the symptoms, in case you don't get a chance to watch the video, but I do highly recommend you watch the video. So make sure that if these symptoms are coming up, that you break the dry fast, that you don't go further than your body is telling you that it's safe to do so. So number one, breathing difficulties. You might have heart palpitations. You might find that your chest is a little bit tight for a few seconds. This is okay if it comes like as a one-off kind of symptom. If you're having ongoing breathing difficulties, time to break the dry fast. Consistent diarrhea, time to break the dry fast. Again, you might have some releases of diarrhea via the colon. This is a sign of acidity coming out of the body, and it does happen sometimes during a dry fast. It's normal. But if it's happening consistently, and particularly if it burns a lot as it's coming out, there's a lot of sulfur, time to break the dry fast. No urine output, no saliva. All the way through to my 7-day, 8-night dry fast, I was having saliva, and I was urinating at least 3 or 4 times a day. Small amounts, extremely concentrated, but I was still urinating. If at any time the saliva output or the urine output stops, these are clear signs to break your dry fast. Consistently fast heart rate, so this is over 100 BPM. Very low or very high blood pressure. And in extent of this, I highly, highly recommend that you get yourself a home blood pressure monitor, which will also be able to monitor your heart rate. Really key that you keep an eye on your vital statistics. So very high, ideally your blood pressure should be 120 over 60. Very high to me is anything like like 10 over or 10 under. If you're consistently like below 100 and like below 40, that's very low. And if you're like 130, 140, like 70, 80, this is too high. And if it's consistently very low or very high over like a few hours, time to break the dry fast. It could be that you have a phase where for 5 or 10 minutes as maybe some adrenal healing takes place or some other kind of recalibration is taking place, that you're going to experience some high blood pressure, but then the body is going to come back to balance. It's okay if this happens, but if it's consistently high or low, definitely a sign to ease off. Extreme weakness to the extent where you can hardly move. Don't push it any further than this, you guys. If you can barely move, you're digging deep, but it's time to break the fast. Otherwise, it's potentially damaging, and I don't want to see you causing yourselves any injury because of an idea you have in your head about a certain number or a certain goal. The goal, if you have a goal at all, is healing, and it's trusting the body, and it's in learning to surrender to the wisdom of the body. Let this be your goal rather than a mind goal of numbers or I will have this result. Like, it's not about that. Surrender and really learn to trust the body and to listen to what the body is telling you. Because when you push a dry fast too far, you can cause damage to your organs and to your glands. And I really, really want to make sure that you guys are all safe. Extreme dizziness and vertigo. This is another sign that it's definitely a time to break the fast. And last but not least, out of control emotions. Stuff's going to come up when you're dry fasting. I've mentioned at the beginning of this that I've cried now 3 times out of 11 days of dry fasting. I've had 3 days where lots of emotional things came up, and all 3 of those days were dry days. But I cried, I processed, I let go, and within like 20 minutes, I'm fine. If you're like extremely out of control with the emotions, if the crying won't stop, if all of these other things are going on, it's a sign that it's a bit too much. Definitely allow the emotional body to guide you as well, not just the physical body, because if the emotions are out of control, this is a sign that perhaps the adrenals are being overstimulated. Maybe there's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, maybe a lot of anger is coming out and it's out of control. That's a sign that maybe some liver stuff is going on. Maybe there's a lot of worry, the kidneys, maybe a huge amount of grief, maybe the lungs are being pushed too far. So whatever intense emotion you're experiencing, whatever is coming up for you, if it's too much, that is a surefire sign that it's definitely time to break the fast. So please bear in mind these symptoms and know them, so you've got them and you know what to look out for so that you don't push the dry fast too hard. So before I wrap up, I'm going to quickly see if I've missed any questions. Wow, so many. What about veggie juices? Veggie juices are okay, but they are not astringent. And I use vegetable juices. I personally don't consume vegetable juices really anymore, but I use them more to slow down the detox and to ground and to help support and remineralize the body. But ideally, you're going to be looking for the astringency, which is only really ideally, in the fruits. Ideally, that's what you're going to want to break the fast with. That's not to say that veggie juices are not good. And if the astringent juices are too much for you or they're not available, no worries. But let's say you're having carrots, celery, and ginger juice. Make sure you put loads of ginger because that's nice and astringent. And make sure you add lemon or lime to really, and loads of it, to really pump up the astringency level of your veggie juices. Congrats, Nick's love, on your 3-day green juice fast. That's great. If someone's got skin candida, can do dry fast? Absolutely. And actually dry fasting is very, very supportive and effective of healing and redressing underlying skin conditions, because any kind of skin condition basically has kidney weakness as its root underlying cause. The skin is known as the third kidney. So anytime you dry fast, you're helping support the health of the skin. And you're also helping support the body as it comes into homeostasis, so that the symptoms of the candida can naturally go away. You can also use a little bit of tea tree oil or clove essential oil or lavender essential oil, and these can kind of help mitigate some of the symptoms if the rash is uncomfortable or if it's oozing or anything like this. But absolutely, fasting, particularly dry fasting, is really, really beneficial for any kind of skin conditions. I read herbs are toxic. That's why they suppress symptoms like pharmaceuticals, but they're natural. I understand the school of thought that you're coming from, and there is some truth to that. But what I feel is actually happening at the higher level is that, yes, there is some toxicity in some herbs, but the overall benefit of the information contained in the herbs far outweighs any of the negative consequences of some toxicity that then the body has to eliminate. And when you're taking things like herbal tinctures, whilst you're fasting, etc., the body's already in purging mode. It's already in elimination mode. If there is a trace amount of toxicity, then the body is already eliminating a bunch of toxicity. So it's not a big deal to get that out. And actually what's happening here is kind of like an energetic marriage between the particular organ or gland or part of the body or tissue or whatever and the specific herb. And I think it's no coincidence that we have all of these incredible herbs that are available to us and how each one speaks to each specific part of our body. And to me, this is not a coincidence. And I feel that herbs really are here to help us. And if I'm going to speak from my own direct experience, Dylan, let's say I'm personally still taking adrenal tinctures. So whenever I take the licorice tincture to heal my adrenals, I actually experience increased symptoms of adrenal weakness. So sometimes I can take the tinctures and for like half an hour or maybe an hour afterwards, I feel a bit weak or I feel a little bit dizzy, or if I stand up too quickly, I might see black, or I feel a little bit anxious or on edge, which to me are signs of adrenal, something's happening at the adrenal level. So to me, the fact that I take the tinctures and actually what I feel is an increase in the symptoms, which to me indicates that underlying healing is taking place, I don't see how that can be symptom suppression when actually it's bringing up the symptoms to the surface, which therefore to me equals healing rather than suppression. Because when you think about it, whenever we have anything that needs any kind of obstruction that's in the body, it came from this direction inwards. It came from the outside in, right? And it's in the body, it's stored at the cellular level, and then through fasting, through cellular detox, it's time for it to be released. And what happens is it comes from the inside out. And then as it's coming out, the symptom is being expressed and experienced as the imbalance, weakness, obstruction, whatever it is leaving the body. So for me, the fact that I take the adrenal tincture and I instantly begin to feel weaker or like dizzier or whatever symptom of adrenal weakness, that to me is showing that it's actually healing and the opposite of symptom suppression is taking place. There is truth, however, in what you're saying, and this is one of the reasons why I don't recommend sprouts. Because there is, in baby plants and baby herbs, there is a high concentration of toxicity because it's basically the only defense mechanism that the little baby herb has to prevent it being eaten by any kind of bug or critter on the forest floor. And ideally, you want to eat plants, if you're going to have herbs, that are fully grown, not babies. And if you guys are curious, again, I've done a video on sprouts and why I don't actually think they're as much of a health food as people claim they are. And I will make sure to post that on YouTube as well in the coming days. So I've got probably at least a handful of old videos that I've mentioned, which I highly recommend that you check out because they're very much on point in terms of what we've been talking about today. Goodness me, I can't believe we're coming on to 3 hours. Okay, I'm really going to scroll through, and unless it's like a super pressing question, I'm gonna wrap it up now. Candice, I'm wondering whether you're referring to, when you asked how do you spell that, whether you're referring to Chanca Piedra or to Trifala or to Cascara Sagrada. I'm not sure, but I think it's the Chanca Piedra. Let me write it down. It helps me. So it's Chanca space Piedra, which literally means in Spanish stone breaker. So you can even search stone breaker tincture and then you'll find it. I think this is what you're after. How many eliminations do you do per 4 liters? It depends really on how I'm feeling, but generally I tend to take all 4 liters in one go. I hold it in and then I eliminate all in one go. But it took me many, many years of practice to get to this. And it could be that you have 4, 5, many more, potentially more eliminations per 4 liters. So don't worry about it. Just wherever you're at, that's where you're at. Hold it in for as long as you can. But if you can't and you must eliminate, no worries. A lot of the time after dry fasting, the water is so filthy that you don't need to retain. Like as soon as you feel the need to eliminate, that's the body saying, this water's too toxic, get it out of me. I missed it. What fruit should we use to break the fast? It's astringent fruits, Monda. So anything like citrus, watermelon, pomegranate, cranberry, dark purple grapes, basically the dark colored fruits, of which I would say the dark purple grapes and the watermelon are the most easily available and the most easy to juice. And then obviously citrus. So grapefruit, orange, tangerine, mandarin, plenty of lemon, plenty of lime. And then if you're having watermelon juice or dark purple grape juice, plenty of lemon, plenty of lime to really alkalize and really, really increase the astringency. Great. Alcohol versus glycerin. I always recommend the alcohol tinctures. They're much more powerful, in many ways much more natural. The glycerin is a little bit dodgy. Obviously some cannot take the alcohol for religious or spiritual purposes, and I understand that, in which case by all means take the glycerin. But unless you have a very strict adherence against alcohol, even if you've quit alcohol and you don't drink anymore, it's such a minute amount of alcohol that it's not a big deal and the body can process it very easily, and it's really, really worth it for the information that's contained within the tincture. I've been sprouting all week. It's okay. Look, Susie, it's not like you're gonna die of toxicity from eating sprouts. I'm just saying don't overdo it, because they do contain some toxicity. And check out the video I did, Susie. You're going to see and understand a bit more why I said what I said. And the reason that sprouting is a thing is because, I've forgotten her name right now, it escapes me, but she was kind of an old school raw vegan lady from the kind of beginning, early 20th century. And she was living, I'm going to say something like Sweden or Norway. And for a lot of the year, there was no fresh food available. There was very little by way of nutrition, by way of greens. And actually, when you're living in a climate that is so unnatural for humans, no offense to my Scandinavian brothers and sisters, I'm just saying that it's extremely cold and nothing grows there fresh for quite a few months of the year. In that context, sprouting, and okay, there's some toxicity, is still better than having no fresh food and having no enzymes and stuff like this. Because if you're living only on preserved foods and there's no fresh food and there's no living structured water by way of, sprouts are very high in water. There are many, many benefits. But what I'm saying is that it was created with a specific context in mind, which was basically one of scarcity, one of lack. And when there's scarcity, you make do with what you can. And in that context, sprouts are super beneficial. But if you have an abundance of fruits and veggies and herbs, you really don't need to. And the whole sprouting thing, with respect, is kind of a fad, unless you're in this kind of scarcity situation, in which case, go ahead and use it. Dylan, he's like, I love my alfalfa sprouts. I'm devastated to hear that. I used to love sprouts too, because I'd convinced myself that they were healthy. But then actually when it came to it, I realized I don't love sprouts. What I love is being healthy. And as soon as I learned that actually it's not as black and white as I thought, it's a little bit more nuanced, I came to see that actually I'm much better off putting a massive handful of coriander, a massive handful of basil or other herbs that are really parsley, that are like pulling out heavy metals from my body and actually working medicinally in my favor, rather than these sprouts that, okay, contain a lot of benefits, but actually some toxicity. So it's subtle. I'm not saying don't ever eat sprouts, but I personally don't sprout anymore. I just don't enjoy them. And when I eat them, I find that there's a slight bitterness and then a slight, I can feel in my mouth, there's like a slight something there. Difficult to put into words, but if you eliminate them completely and then you have them again, you feel subtly that the body's telling you this is not 100% optimal. If I put a bit of coriander in my mouth, I love coriander, put a bit of Thai basil, delicious herbs, my body's telling me these are yummy. Whereas with the sprouts, my body's subtly highlighting to me the truth that there is some latent toxicity there. Yeah, she was the wheatgrass lady, Jane something. Yeah, I know who you mean. And I do love wheatgrass, but again, we don't need wheatgrass if we're eating a high abundance of diet of fruits, and we've got loads of coconut water and other greens available to us. And it's only when we're in the situation where there is scarcity and the body needs nutrition, needs enzymes, needs remineralization, all these kinds of things. Okay, last but not least, Anita and Linda. This is going to be the final question, you guys, because I cannot believe that we've almost done 3 hours. Wow. Do you think fasting can correct hormonal imbalances in women that cause hair growth on face and alopecia? Absolutely, sweetheart. It is definitely something that can be redressed, especially when you combine fasting with herbal support by way of herbal tinctures for the endocrine system. And if you are experiencing some issues in that respect, I would suggest that you get an iridology reading. You have your eyes read and you can see, maybe it's the thyroid, maybe it's the pituitary gland or whatever it may be, because the more insight you have about what specifically is happening at the inner level, you can make more precise application with the herbs to support your healing. So that you can redress these symptoms of hormonal imbalance, and absolutely healing can take place. I really want to emphasize, you guys, anything and everything can be healed. Dr. Sebi went to court because the pharmaceutical companies were suing him because he was claiming to be able to reverse things like epilepsy, type 1 diabetes, HIV and AIDS. And the pharmaceutical companies were saying, you cannot reverse these. Once you've got this, you're stuck with it for life. And they took him to court and he had to defend himself. And 80 plus people came and gave testimony and showed cases of miraculous remission of HIV, of AIDS, of type 1 diabetes, of all sorts of other so-called incurable diseases. Allopathic medicine has this idea that once you've got something, that's it. It's so false, and it's so deeply steeped in fear and ignorance. The body can heal of anything and everything, so long as it's given the correct environment, so long as it's, fed with the correct frequencies of self-love and of surrender. And fasting is, in my humble opinion, the most powerful modality available right now on planet Earth for the healing and the betterment of humanity. Because things like meditation, things like, the higher, more subtle practices, you almost cannot access the frequency from which to meditate if you are in an extremely obstructed body, and if your system is simply just too toxic. Your consciousness is going to be toxic. You're not going to be able to embody the frequencies that bring about self-actualization. And this, for me, is why fasting is so potent. It clears away any muck, any debris at all levels, not just the physical body, not just the pranic body, not just the mental body, every subtle emotional body that's going on, every little thing that we have going on. The fasting works, and it brings harmony, and it brings synergy, and it brings wholeness. And the result of that is inner peace. It's freedom, it's healing, it's creation, it's abundance. But obviously it has to be done correctly. It has to be practiced according to, ways that are known to support the body. I see so much incorrect fasting, like people water fasting but diluting Himalayan sea salt into their water. Huge error. I see people fasting and then breaking fasts with animal products. I see people fasting and doing excessive amounts of exercise. I see people doing so much crazy stuff. And it's because there's so much misinformation out there, and it's